The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Monday, October 1st, 2018. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, the editor of Current Affairs, Nathan J. Robinson, on how we know Kavanaugh is lying. Meanwhile, surprise! The FBI Kavanaugh inquiry is a sham. White House has decided it will be extremely limited in its scope and depth. The question now is, for how long can Jeff Flake et al. Pretend not to realize that? Meanwhile, new NAFTA deal signed. As far as we can tell, basically the same as the old NAFTA deal. But what is new is California's new net neutrality law and the Department of Justice lawsuit filed to stop it. Meanwhile, Rebecca Mitchell's final offense, as the Maricopa prosecutor tries to redeem herself in Republican circles.
Did you call her Remecca? Because I like that.
Rebecca Mitchell?
Yeah, like, meh.
Rebecca. Meh. Yeah, no. But, yeah. The Supreme Court case, which could save Donald Trump. And just a reminder, we're now holding 13,000 children, moving them around in the dead of the night because it makes for a lot less compelling video. And Crystal Mason heads to prison for casting a vote that was never counted. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, the Ted Leo version of Pressure Drop. We have some other songs that are coming in, and we will try and cycle through some of them. Some of them, the pacing of the songs, even the Pressure Drop version from Ted, it's hard for me to get used to because, like a Pavlovian dog, for now, the Pressure Drop we used on the Sam Seder Show 9 to noon. So we're talking about 9 or 10 years of essentially of training to jump and to react at certain notes in that song. But I got it today. I timed it.
You sounded good over that first lick.
That's when it's a little bit tougher because it's interesting. I'd have to go back to find out like what fired that synapse in my brain that said, okay, now's the time to talk. But so if the point being, if the pace of what you sent in is a little bit slower, then I don't know if we can use it because I'll have some type of breakdown. Ladies and gentlemen, just a reminder, this week I will be headed to Las Vegas, Nevada for the tort conference that I go to talk to lawyers there involved in lawsuits. It will not be a dramatic difference in terms of our programming week, however, but just make sure you tune to that. People like those shows from from Vegas, and I always find it interesting to talk to these lawyers. And to a large extent, like one of the things I'm hopefully going to track down one lawyer. I'm not convinced that there aren't civil courses that can be followed if so desired on what would otherwise be criminal charges that we've seen involving Brett Kavanaugh. Wrongful death, you see those in the context of, let's say, the O.J. Simpson case. I don't know what the equivalent would be, but I'm going to be around a lot of lawyers, so I will ask them. Just a reminder, folks, this show relies on its members for its support. You can become a member today at Join the Majority Report. And I might as well, let me do this one first. If you watched Chris Hayes Thursday night, you saw the first appearance that I ever did on MSNBC. Well, it's not. I guess I've only been using Harry's for a couple of years, but the first unshaven appearance that I've ever had on MSNBC. And it was after the 8 hours of broadcasting, the hearings, and then I had to record something for Ring of Fire. And then I went into the bathroom. I'm like, I've got to shave. I have literally 30 seconds to do it. And I had the Harry's razor, and I did part of the cheek, and then I'm like, this is a mistake. I can't shave this quickly. I'm not going to be able to do this. And so I just shaved I have no idea how to sculpt a beard. So I just shaved right here and here, and then ran out the door. And I took a lot of grief from it. In fact, I heard from my Uncle Eddie and Aunt Carol that the Ories, who lived down the street, sent them an email saying Sam should shave when he goes on television. That's the depth of how people are invested in my Harry's razor.
Do they know Harry? Like, what's going on here?
I don't know. But Harry's founders know that a great shave comes down to great blades made with sharp, durable steel that lasts. That's why they make some of the highest quality blades in the world, priced much lower than the leading brand. And they will even give you a full refund if you don't love your shave, as long as you let them know within 30 days. Harry stands behind the quality of their blades. So they created a $13 value trial set that comes with everything you need for a close, comfortable shave. Weighted, ergonomic handle, 5-blade razor with lubricating strip and trimmer blade, rich lathering shave gel, travel blade cover. Claim yours by going to harrys.com/majority report. You know what I love about Harry's? Reasonably priced, sort of like a little bit fancy. The handle is well sculpted. I happen to have the chrome one. I like that. And then they give you shaving cream and the whole thing. And, the narrow blade is important because of my the asymmetry between my nostrils. And now our listeners can redeem their trial set at harrys.com/majority report. Make sure you go to harrys.com/majority report to redeem your offer, ladies and gentlemen. It's a good deal. Check it out. Let them know I sent you to help support the show. Okay, so the premise of why I wanted to have Nathan Robinson on to talk about the many ways in which we know Brett Kavanaugh is lying basically goes to that concept that Blumenthal introduced, the Latin phrase that means false in one thing, false in all things. And if you have a federal judge, put aside for a moment, like, he doesn't quite have the temperament that you might want from a federal judge.
Not quite.
You also might not want a federal judge on there who is literally blaming the Clintons.
No, you are.
You are.
I don't know. Do you blame the Clintons?
To blame the Clintons for Blasey Ford is deep end territory.
Got to get Blasey Ford on that. Just the same guy that was fishing around the Vince Foster.
It's really nuts.
Blasey Ford.
It's really nuts. And that seems to me to be contrary to the temperament you might want for a justice on the highest court in the land. But because the Senate is such an incredibly undemocratic place, let's tune into the two people, I guess, to get to decide everything That is Jeff Flake and Chris Coons. Chris Coons, incidentally, the guy who says, like, if we take back the Senate, we should really institute the filibuster. Just to give you a sense of just sort of how rarefied the air that these two must breathe, that they think, let's just play this. They're on 60 Minutes.
Brought forward. If Judge Kavanaugh is shown to have lied to the committee, nomination's over?
Oh, yes. I would think so.
Yes, I would think so. Well, then I've got good news, everybody. You should send today's podcast to Jeff Flake and Chris Coons because maybe they haven't figured this out themselves.
Jeff Flake responded to the word shown, so not listened. If you hear that he was testifying falsely, then that still doesn't count. He has to be shown it visually.
What?
Someone can send him to YouTube.
I'm just saying how Flake's going to get out of it. Like, it depends on what
the
criteria for shown is.
He hasn't actually said that.
Well, that's what he took out of the 60 Minutes guys.
Yeah, I like the way you're thinking.
Wait a second.
If it's shown that he was lying, like Jeff Flake's just going to say, it didn't meet my criteria for what shown to be lying is.
Right. Well, yeah, of course. But maybe we'll see if that's a little bit different after today's show. Folks. Blue Apron has a mission. It's to make incredible home cooking accessible to everyone. You can make dinner now in as little as 20 minutes. They've got quick and easy recipe options that are perfectly proportioned with ingredients delivered right to your door. No meal planning or shopping required, whether you're looking for a quick and easy meal or a full culinary experience. Blue Apron lets you choose from a range of recipe options. This is nice. I like this newer version. I hate to say it, I just don't have the time to cook. So if I can get it down 20 minutes, bingo. Get out of your cooking rut and experience the joy of new recipes. Talk about, I can tell you, one of the things that, we talk about like convenience and satiating that guilt you have as a parent where you're like, oh God, I don't want to just get takeout food or frozen dinner for them again. But I also, frankly, not going to spend an hour and a half cooking a meal. Forgive me. What are you going to do?
I have things to read on the internet.
Well, I got to do work. Stir-fried sweet chili chicken, seared steaks, homemade steak sauce. And these were amazing. Seared beef, dumplings, and jasmine rice.
Wow.
Yep.
I could go for that right this second.
Check out this week's menu and get your first 3 meals free. Why wouldn't anybody do this? You get 3 meals free. They send it to your house. You can choose each week how many you're going to get. BlueApron.com/majority. That's BlueApron.com/majority. Get your first 3 meals free. Blue Apron, a better way to cook. Going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be talking to Nathan Robinson. We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report on the phone. It is a pleasure to welcome back to the program Nathan J. Robinson. He is the editor of Current Affairs magazine at currentaffairs.org. Nathan, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Nice to be with you, Sam.
Okay, so your piece has gotten, a lot of people have cited it as being the most comprehensive piece on the many myriad of lies and ways Judge Kavanaugh lied during his hearing. And we just played a clip from Jeff Flake and Chris Coons from 60 Minutes when they were asked if it was shown that Kavanaugh lied during the hearing, would that be enough to disqualify him? And they said yes. They didn't say specifically shown about lying what or about what or what shown means, right? But I suggest that maybe people start sending your piece to them, or they can just listen to the show if they don't want to have to, if they can't read.
Whatever definition of shown you adopt, I think I meet it somewhere in the 11,000 words of that article.
Well, let's go through some of these, and you basically just walk through without making an assessment of what Ford says, just judging or I guess assessing what Kavanaugh says. So you start with Kavanaugh's denial, and this is the first one that you cite. I never attended a gathering like the one Dr. Ford describes in her allegation. Now, please address that for us. And to some extent, it's sort of a shame. It feels like the Democrats either didn't have the information long enough beforehand, which is very possible, or they just didn't do enough in researching this stuff to push back. But we have the I guess the value of hindsight. But go ahead, walk us through that.
Well, I mean, I do think I think they had a lot of information and didn't use it well. There was plenty of stuff that was just in plain sight. But yeah, so the gathering lie. He says, I never attended a gathering like the one Ms. Ford described. And there's this sort of efforts to hint that it was like this, that she's describing this kind of big bacchanalian party, like a toga party or something, like this crazy party that everyone would have remembered. But actually, her testimony, she says that she's been misrepresented in the press because it wasn't a large party. It was a small gathering with friends in Bethesda with over a few drinks. Now, Kavanaugh, of course, attended small gatherings in Bethesda over a few drinks. I mean, when he says he didn't attend a gathering like this, I mean, I'm sure he attended lots of gatherings like this. But then he also goes on to specify and say, I didn't attend a gathering. I also didn't attend the gathering with any of the people, with the group of people that Christine Blasey Ford says were at this gathering. And that is just directly contradicted by the calendar that he provided to exonerate himself.
Yeah, I mean, he mentions specifically that July 1st entry involves 6 people, 4 of whom were ones that she said was at a party very similar to that.
Well, yeah, she said that she remembered 4 boys, Brett, PJ, Mark Judge, and one whose name she couldn't remember. And on the July 1st entry, July 1st, summer 1982, Brett Kavanaugh says he's going for drinks over to Timmy's with Mark Judge, PJ, and a couple of other boys. So the group, when he tries to say, these weren't my people, right, he started naming other people that he did hang out with over the summer. And he didn't mention the fact that when she said Mark and PJ, those were his friends. He did go to gatherings with them. So the interesting thing here is that he also buried that information, right? He tried deliberately to direct the Senate's attention away from this event by pointing to weekends. He does this fascinating thing where he goes, well, presumably the event she's describing happened on a weekend, and I was usually out of town on the weekend. But this July 1st gathering is on a Thursday, so you can see why he wants to push you towards the weekend.
Now, we should also say that on the 1st, there's another guy there, Squee, who is Chris Garrett, and Chris Garrett had the great misfortune of being the evil doppelganger in Ed Whelan's fevered conspiracy, but he also in real life, if I'm not mistaken, was the one that Ford said introduced me to Kavanaugh.
Yes. Yeah, she says that Chris Squee Garrett, they went out a couple of times, and that, he was her connection to Kavanaugh. And we know that Kavanaugh knew Chris because he's on the calendar. So we know he knew Chris Garrett. Now, Chris Garrett, I don't think has made any public statements about whether he knew Christine Ford. I don't know whether he's backed up or denied what she says. But that would be a connection. Brett Kavanaugh said they didn't move in the same social circles. I mean, Kavanaugh's testimony essentially tries to suggest that she's totally off base. She was like at a different school on the other side of town, and we didn't move in the same circles. I never saw this woman. And actually, it's the circles that they moved in turned out to be much, much closer than what he described in his testimony.
It would be an unbelievable coincidence that this woman had created this fiction about these people who all just happened to be good buddies of Kavanaugh's. And he just like out of whole cloth, like she would have come up with this, right? Like how could she possibly know that Judge and Kavanaugh were such good friends if she didn't know them?
If he did. And she said that she was at this thing with Judge and PJ before he released the calendars, confirming it. And the other thing is that her account is corroborated by Mark Judge's memoir, because she said in her testimony that 6 to 8 weeks later, she ran into Mark Judge, and he looked very embarrassed, and he didn't want to talk to her. And she ran into him at his job at the supermarket. And in Mark Judge's memoir, he says that late in that summer, he was working at the supermarket. So there are details that do add up. People say there's no corroboration. I mean, it depends what you consider corroboration, but there are reasons to believe that, she's definitely not as Kavanaugh portrayed her. He wanted to suggest that all of this was just totally, totally crazy.
I mean, to me, interviewing Chris Garrett has always struck me to be the most important person they could interview. I mean, obviously Judge, but Judge is going to get up there and live. It strikes me as Chris Garrett would have a very tough time lying about the fact that he knew that they knew each other, right? That all it would take is him to say, "No, I did. I introduced him to Kavanaugh. Of course, she knew Kavanaugh. Of course, Kavanaugh knew her," and that's the end of the game right there. I mean, that's it seems to me
no, it's crucial. And what's he going to say? I mean, if he says no, me and Christy Ford never went out, well, that really hurts, what she's saying. But if he says, she's completely correct about that, then that really does make out a case for Kavanaugh. I mean, we've already made out the case that Kavanaugh lied under oath a bunch of times. You don't need to do it more times. I stress in this article that the investigation is almost unnecessary at this point, just because from the testimony itself you have so many damning things.
Well, I want to talk about we'll get to the investigation in a moment, to the extent that there is one, because it's pretty arguable that there is not one, not even an inquiry, and we will get there. But let's go through a couple of these key moments. So he lied about never being at a party like the one she talks about. In fact, he also later admitted he was at a party almost exactly like the one that she talked about, as defined by the people and the location and the sort of offhand. Do we have a sense, though? His argument is like, "Oh, we would go to Tobin's house and work out." What is your sense? I know you don't really touch on in the piece. I'm just curious. Like, there's something weird about the Tobin's house workouts, because he also, during his testimony, he got super emotional about those workouts.
Well, he got emotional about a lot of things in that testimony. When he started talking about his calendars, he started weeping, which was very, very odd.
Well, no, I thought that was okay because it reminded him of his dad, and he was doing it because he wanted to be like his dad. And then, I don't have that kind of relationship. But
I bought that when I thought initially when I saw that his father was deceased.
Right.
And he was reminiscing, but his father was in the room.
Well, maybe he was upset that he had to have his dad hear about how he have his dad watch him lie about this.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what to make of the workout. I'm trying to be really, really cautious about not speculating. People have emailed me a ton of stuff where they're like, and what about this additional thing? I'm like, yeah, it is fishy and strange. I mean, the whole calendar thing is strange to begin with, like keeping these meticulous calendars. But I'm trying to even though I come to a very strong conclusion, I'm trying to produce a really conservative case.
All right, fair enough.
I'm not arguing. Yeah.
All right, I'll respect that and won't make you go to places where I'm going. So it says here, at one point, Kavanaugh said, all the witnesses who were there that day say it didn't happen. Ms. Kaiser, this is Leland Kaiser, this is Ford's friend. This is really, amazing how many friends. Kavanaugh didn't say. Ms. Kaiser, her longtime friend, said she never saw me at a party with or without Dr. Ford. The only problem is that Ms. Kaiser never said that. In fact, none of the people gave the denial that Kavanaugh claimed they did. Just tease that out for us.
Yeah, Mark Judge kind of did. His first statement didn't, and his second statement said, well, I've never seen Brett Kavanaugh do anything like this, which does suggest that it didn't happen. But TJ's statement just says, I have no knowledge of this. And I have no knowledge. It's very important. Kavanaugh conflated them because he thought people wouldn't notice. But I have no knowledge of the thing is not the same as I have knowledge that the thing is false. And that's really important because I might not know about something, and it might still be true. And so Leland Kaiser is interesting because this is egregious, right? Brett Kavanaugh goes in front of the Senate and he says, and he emphasizes over and over, I collected the clips and it's about 5 times he says, all of the people say it didn't happen. And then he cites a couple of times, he said, Ms. Kaiser, she says it didn't happen. She's the best friend. If she says it, then there's nothing. And, Ford must be crazy, essentially, is the implication. But Ford thinks it did happen. Ford said she told the Washington Post that she believes Christine Ford, which means that she actually thinks the opposite of what Kavanaugh said she thinks. So, I just think that's as blatant. He knew that. He knows what... He's citing what she said, but he's just citing the opposite because he thinks he can fool people. So it's just false. He just told a falsehood.
That's another one we'll chalk up for his line. No, I don't know. I guess, how important do you think not lying to the Senate is to be a justice of the Supreme Court?
I'd say pretty important. The whole thing, the whole mythology of the court is the sanctity of the rule of law and oaths of office and the dignity of the United States government. If you just go before the Senate and you just treat the oath of your oath with total contempt, that should disqualify you not just from being on the Supreme Court, but probably from holding any major government office ever again.
Let's talk about the country club. There was a real sense, according to Kavanaugh, that and I think even the prosecutor was trying to make it like the country club, was sort of, everybody was untethered from the country club in some fashion. But that's not exactly the case either, is it?
No, we haven't met. Look, the thing, Brett Kavanaugh tried to suggest again that everything was so far apart, we never moved in the same circle. But when he looked at it, and he said, the country club is not near where I lived, so, and Christine Ford said she was at the country club that day. He said, well, that's not where I lived. Well, Bethesda is actually a pretty small, it's about 5 miles across, I don't know, that's a rough estimate. It's small. And there was a map presented in the Senate that showed where they all lived, and they all lived within a few miles of each other. And Ford, I think Kavanaugh actually lived closer to the country club than Ford did. So I mean, he's just trying to create an impression that if you actually look at a map, you can instantly see is completely false. Also, by the way, one of my favorite facts is that his father and Christine Ford's father were members of the same golf club. So, that's the same circle. They both were at, like, DC elite schools. So they're very, very close ties here.
And they're all making it out like these are huge distances, but I mean, these are all like you can ride your bike in 20 minutes to any of these places.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. All right. So the idea that Kavanaugh was not a big drinker in high school. I mean, I know he liked beer.
The alcohol. Yeah.
I mean, he likes beer.
The first thing I want to mention is why it's important. Because there was a lot of the Republicans like to say, well, you're examining his high school yearbook for evidence that he drank. This is ridiculous. Look at you, he drank and that matters. It actually matters quite a lot because all three sexual misconduct allegations against him say that he was heavily drinking and it involved alcohol. And Brett Kavanaugh's defense when he got up there and he was asked, or when he got up there and he gave the reasons why you should believe him, he said, I wasn't this person. I was not the person they're describing me as, this horrible, belligerent, drunken frat bro. I was studious. I went to church. I volunteered at the soup kitchen. I was a good kid. And so that makes it important. And if it's false, if it turns out that all of that is completely false, which it is, then that both, number one, is, again, perjury, but also affects his credibility on the accusation itself.
Right. This goes to the Blumenthal's Latin saying false in one thing, false in all things, which is evidence that judges give to juries in regards to witnesses who have testified. Let's just go through some of the evidence that he's more than just an ordinary social drinker.
Yeah, I keep finding more evidence. I like literally 5 minutes before we got on we started this interview, I just found a Yale Daily News article that said he ran weekly tailgate parties during his time at Yale. He hosted them every week. So you just keep finding more stuff. And a new person came out yesterday who was at Yale with him and actually recounted a violent incident in which he threw a beer in a guy's face and started a fight. But you just have so many quotes. I mean, from really distinguished alumni of Yale, people like the head of gynecological oncology at the University of Washington came out and said, "I used to booze with Brett all the time in college, and he's full of it." You had freshman year roommate. The New York Times talked to a dozen people. The yearbook is full of references to. He literally has 100 kegs or bust on his yearbook page, right? This is just such a ridiculous picture for him to try to paint because it's so contradicted by so many people who knew him.
So, I mean, just because he was the treasurer of the Keg City Club, do you think that means that he likes to drink a lot, or is he like to maybe just he likes to handle money?
Well, we don't know because this is one thing that they never asked him. The word keg does not appear in the transcript of the hearing, which is kind of shocking because to me, like, the Mark Judge said, I think in his memoir, that they had a contest to try and get to 100 kegs in one school year, to go through 100 kegs. And Brett Kavanaugh has it on his yearbook page. So you think if you were examining the alcohol-related facts, that would be something to mention, but they didn't ask about it, so we don't know much about the Keg City Club.
White House asked him about his, and I didn't catch until I read your piece that it wasn't just, it didn't just mention that he Ralphed a lot, but it was specifically tied into the Beach Week Ralph Club.
Yes.
As if his stomach was only upset at Beach Week. Because presumably this food is spicy on Beach Week.
Yeah, so despite they go to beaches in Thailand. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it was just ridiculous, right? Because he's asked about the Beach Week Ralph. I mean, if you watch the exchanges, because they're hilarious. Because he's asked, I think, by Sheldon Whitehouse. He says, well, could you explain what Ralphing means in the Beach Week Ralph Club? And he said, oh, it is vomiting, but I have a very sensitive stomach. Everyone knows that. And Sheldon Whitehouse says, okay, but was it also alcohol related? And Kavanaugh says, do you like beer? I like beer. That's what he says. He doesn't answer the question.
He says, in fact, he says, quote, that probably refers to throwing up, probably. I'm known to have a weak stomach, and I always have. In fact, the last time I was there, you asked me about having ketchup on spaghetti. I always had a weak stomach. This is well known. Anyone who knows me, a lot of these people behind me, they know me my whole life. You know. I got a weak stomach, whether it's with beer or spicy food or anything.
But, there's a follow-up. No, I remember what he says in response to the next follow-up is he says, something like, Senator, I went to Yale.
Yeah, here goes. So the vomiting you reference at the Ralph Club reference related to the consumption of alcohol. Senator, I was at the top of my class academically. Busted my butt in school. Big captain of varsity basketball team. Got into Yale College. When I got into Yale College, got into Yale Law School, worked my tail off.
Yeah. So was it alcohol related? Answer, I went to Yale. And you go, well, what does that mean? Do people not drink a lot of alcohol at Yale? Are there no alcoholics at Yale? George W. Bush went to Yale, for God's sake. I mean,
and then
it's such an odd deflection.
White House goes, did it relate to alcohol? You haven't answered that. Kavanaugh says, I like beer. I like beer. I don't know if you do. White House says, okay, do you like beer, Senator, or not? When you read this stuff, we watched it in the context of hour 3.5. You're just like, But when you see it isolated like this, it's nuts. It's like a conversation.
It's ridiculous.
If we turn this into gummy worms, and there were some missing from the cabinet, and I asked my 5-year-old son, did you have gummy worms? And he goes, Billy was mean to me today at school. I'm not asking you that. Did you have gummy worms?
Yeah. But, you can't believe that the Senate failed to pin him down on some of this stuff because he was just, he wasn't answering anything. He was doing this, and it was just the whole way through he was doing this. And the thing is, it seems like it's a way of trying to avoid having to tell a lie, but he also told a bunch of outright lies, so I don't even see what he was doing. And the thing is that you can think about the fact that he could have constructed a far more plausible explanation. He could have just said, when I was young, I was a jock, and I drank a lot. Right? I used to drink, I used to party, I used to love it. I recovered, and now I'm a judge, and people should appreciate that. But instead, he just constructed this totally fictitious story.
And I won't ask you to speculate why someone might do that if they felt, but I think a lot of people can say well, I guess if I knew I was a blackout drunk in high school and in college, conceding that might concede that I might not be the best witness as to what I did or did not do in certain situations. But this one,
it could be very harmful.
The Renate the Renate one. Let's talk about this because
yes, let's talk about that because that's an interesting example of something that really he could have just said sorry for. And did not. Instead, doubled down repeatedly.
Well, just lay it out for folks because this is when I've talked about it over the weekend, this is the moment that I find in some ways the most stunning in some ways. But go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it seems like a small one, but I think it's a really big one, which is, so they knew, all the guys on the football team knew this girl named Renate or Renate, and she, in their yearbook, and a couple of the Georgetown prep students have given quotes to the New York Times saying that the football players said really disgusting things about her, and they all used to pretend that they'd gotten with her and have real innuendos about her. And indeed, in the yearbook, they all list themselves as like members of the Renate Alumni Club. They have a caption, and Brett Kavanaugh has it on his page too. And and so when she found out about this, she actually initially signed the letter in support of him. But when she found out that she had never known that this was in the yearbook, and when it was presented to her, she said she was horrified. She couldn't believe that they would have done that to her. She was really hurt. And yet Kavanaugh, instead of admitting that they were really hurtful to this girl in high school, said, oh, no, it had nothing to do with sexual bragging, and it couldn't have because I never actually had any sexual interaction with her. That was his argument. He said it was just a tribute to a dear friend, and this media circus is turning this sick. And then he posed as her defender, and he said, and you're bringing up this, dragging this woman's name through. Shame on you. Right? And the thing is, he was really despicable to this girl in high school, and now it's like lying about it and pretending. It's just such an awful thing to do. And there's also confirmation that it was about sex, because elsewhere in the yearbook there's a little poem that's impossible to mistake for anything else, and it names her.
Well, there were two things that were interesting about this. One, his lawyer had put out a different statement about this than he did, right? That which I was surprised that did not come up. But also, this is one of those moments where, all the other stuff, you need to sort of like think about it for half a second. This is one instance where it occurs to me, like, every single person in that room, his wife, his mom, his dad, all of his supporters, all of his detractors, every single one of those senators, the prosecutor, people holding microphones, every single person in that room knew that he was lying about this. And no one said a word.
No, I know. It's startling. Well, it's very telling to me when he gave a speech a couple of years ago where he said, what happens at Georgetown Prep stays at Georgetown Prep, and that's a good thing. And I think what you're seeing here is the kind of wagon circling, protecting their own thing that elites do, like the Yale Club usually does. I mean, it's not really working for Brett Kavanaugh because we have like a list of Yale alumni who are all saying he's lying. But yeah, you can see that the Georgetown Prep people are like, maybe they know inside that he's lying, but nobody says anything because you don't say things about a fellow whatever.
But it also struck me, just even the people who were not supporters of him. Like, everybody there knew he was lying. And it was just amazing to me that nobody said, come on, Judge, you're lying. We know you're lying. You're lying about that. Yeah. And I don't know. I thought that was pretty crazy. I mean, there was the Devil's Triangle thing, about it being a drinking game. And, I have to say, like, I copped to not knowing what Devil's Triangle was.
No.
I mean, so
I had no idea of it either. But the interesting thing is, if you watch the moment where he says it, it's really funny because there's a long pause. And so, I had friends who knew about this and who informed me that it has a number of definitions. It's like the title of a King Crimson album, but it's not a drinking game. There's no drinking game. He just made that one up. And it's pretty clear that among fratty people, this is kind of what that they would be referring to the sexual definition of the word of the time. And so, if you watch the moment, it's really funny because Sheldon Whitehouse goes, Devil's Triangle, and Brett Kavanaugh goes, silence, silence, drinking game. And then Whitehouse instantly he jumps on it and he goes, well, how's it played? And Kavanaugh goes, 3 cups in a triangle.
Do you think, and this is my sense, that was practiced? Like, that was not off the top of his head. they went through this and they said, how are you going to explain this?
Yeah. Yeah, they did practice this. What the devil's trying? What are you going to say when they say this?
Yeah.
What are you going to say with that? Which is interesting, because you'd think if he practiced a bunch, he wouldn't have perjured himself so much.
Well, yes, and I mean, I the moment I feel like I saw that practicing, like the narrowness of the practicing, was when Durbin changed it up and said, personally, do you feel that there should be an FBI investigation? Personally. And that's where he got stumped, because he had practiced like, do you think there should be one? I'm willing to do whatever the committee says, but personally.
Yeah.
And then he just sort of stood there and looked to Grassley like, dude, aren't you supposed to jump in here? I mean, it was really poor theater, obviously, to the extent that they ended up having to ask for this FBI inquiry. But give me your sense. All right, step back for a moment. And you have made this very, I think, conservative, very literal, explicit, no speculation case about his lying. I mean, you lay it out there. This is it's basically a math equation. Step back, though, and be a prognosticator for a moment. Do you think the nature of this FBI investigation, now that it's been revealed that only 4 people are being interviewed, PJ Ramirez, this is the woman who made the other claim about him at Yale, which, of course, can't be substantiated, right? Because you're not talking to anybody else at Yale.
Right.
Mark Judge and Leland Kaiser. Judge said he wants it only confidential. I don't know what that's supposed to mean. But Leland Kaiser is there, who apparently has some type of illness that Ford cited.
Yeah.
And may not want to get involved in this. And Ford basically gave her a pass at the hearing. So do you think, though, with the knowledge about that investigation, and this almost goes without saying, do you think the investigation is going to be sufficient? B, will it be sufficient for its real purpose, which is to provide some type of cover for at least some of those senators?
Yeah. Well, this is why I almost think it was a mistake for Democrats to spend so much of their time and energy in the hearings calling for an FBI investigation, because I think it will allow for, whether it'll work, I don't know, but it certainly is a way of going, well, the FBI ran an investigation, they talked to all the principal people, nothing else came up, and so no more corroboration, let's put him on the court. Yeah, I'm worried, and I kind of wish the Democrats had said, well, let's not call him for the FBI, let's nail him in the hearings. We have one chance to get him. And we can't trust the FBI, because you can't. So, I don't know what's going to come out of it, though. I have no idea.
I have to say, I think the Democrats had to do that with the FBI because there was no guarantee they would nail him in the committee. And doing the FBI thing was the one procedural thing where they could bring on board people like Manchin and Heitkamp, who couldn't afford to make a decision on politics, had to make one on process.
Yeah. It's unfortunate, though, because if it does come out and it's a whitewash, it's gonna be a problem. But the only nice thing is that we have such compelling evidence that it does sort of totally discredit him on the Supreme Court. I mean, it's as a political rallying point, I think it will decrease the popularity of the conservatives on the Supreme Court and will make it harder politically to, say, overturn Roe versus Wade if you have, like, this guy writing the opinion.
Right. Indeed. Well, Nathan J. Robinson, editor of Current Affairs. Folks we will link to this piece. This is the thing that you pass around to, I think, probably the vast majority of people you know who don't follow this stuff well, and so that they can have a very explicit, like you say, conservative, no speculation, just laying out the facts, and just even reading again the transcripts in those key moments is just a bizarre experience. But Nathan, thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. Nice to be with you.
Bye-bye. All right, folks, I'm going to take a quick break, head into the fun half, where we will take your phone calls and your IMs. go over a couple other pieces of sound. Let's do this before we go, briefly. So, it came out over the weekend that the FBI, and I don't know how we know this. We kept hearing stories of the FBI not responding to people from Yale who were trying to get in touch with them to give them a statement. From the woman who was Mark Judge's girlfriend. Mark Judge had told her about his feeling guilty about getting a woman drunk in high school and then basically being part of a train where various men would have sex with her, but according to him, it was consensual. But he was feeling guilty. The FBI is not interviewing her. The FBI is not interviewing Garrett Squee, who could tell us about the relationship between Kavanaugh and Ford. If Kavanaugh was lying when he said he didn't know Ford, because Squee was the one who introduced them, according to Ford. I mean, then we could wrap this whole thing up. All you need to do is ask Garrett. Did you introduce Ford to Kavanaugh? Would you have? You were friends with both. And if he says, I did not, well, then all of a sudden, you know that Blasey Ford is this incredible fabulist. But if he says, yeah, of course I did. I was friends with Kavanaugh. I'd hang out with him. With, the Cheesy and Barbells or whatever those guys are. And
we had Squeeze.
And
Skis.
I went out with Ford. Of course, they would have known each other. Then, Brett Kavanaugh just made a bald-faced lie. And you wonder why. So it comes out over the weekend that the FBI is not doing a thorough, even inquiry, because they are being limited by the White House. Then Donald Trump gets wind that this has been reported and leaked, and so he tweets out, no, the FBI can do whatever they want. But then the FBI, when asked by the Washington Post, no, we have not gotten a formal rescission from the first instructions from the White House, and therefore we are going to limit our investigation. In fact, we may be done tomorrow. As in today or Tuesday. So Jake Tapper interviews Amy Klobuchar about it. And I mean, seriously, Jake Tapper?
Are you confident? You just heard Kellyanne Conway say the FBI can investigate whatever they want to investigate. Are you confident that the FBI will be able to explore everything they want to, including, if they are interested, the Julie Swetnick allegations, including whether or not he was honest to the Senate Judiciary Committee about his drinking?
Well, based on some of the reports that we've seen this weekend, I'm very concerned about this because the White House should not be allowed to micromanage an FBI investigation.
She says they're not. Kellyanne said they're not.
I know. And there was one thing she did say, and that is that the hardworking men and women of the FBI should be able to do their jobs. And on that, I agree. But
is Jake Tapper really citing Kellyanne Conway's public proclamation that the FBI is doing this as some type of refutation? First off, in terms of just the sheer authority, Kellyanne Conway has no more authority to tell the FBI to do anything than I do. And Kellyanne Conway's job has been, from day one, to lie on behalf of the president. So if only Jake Tapper was in a position where he could marshal resources to go and ask the FBI this question to find out exactly what they're doing, instead of saying Kellyanne Conway not once but twice, as if he's serious. I mean, and I know in his mind he's thinking, it's my job It's my job to push back on Klobuchar. She's a senator. She has power. It's my job to push back upon that in terms of what the White House is saying. But the manner in which you do that reflects some notion of your sense of her credibility, right? Because we know Jake Tapper wouldn't say, well, Sam Seder said on his Twitter feed that the FBI is doing this, and that's because everybody would look around and go like, well, all right, I don't know Sam Seder, but to the extent that I do, that doesn't matter. And even though everybody knows who Kellyanne Conway is, and even though she works for the president, it doesn't matter. Thoughtful people know this. Jake Tapper's smart enough to know it doesn't matter what she says. So why is he pretending it does?
Well, because I think journalists like to abdicate certain kinds of responsibility. That's why he likes to point to Mercatus.
But my point is, he's not abdicating responsibility. He would make the assessment if it was me, and I'm sorry. To then decide it's too close of a call, if she's being honest in this instance, he is making an assessment. He is not abdicating. That's my point. He's not abdicating. He's pretending he's abdicating, but he's not. He's actually saying this is a legitimate claim against what you've said, and he knows it's not a legitimate claim. So he's not abdicating. He's actually deciding to weigh in. It's just that he's deciding that by pretending to abdicate, he's abdicating. And he's not abdicating. He's making an assessment as to whether or not the claim is worthy. And he does that every time he puts it on. It is completely controversial, the question as to whether or not Kellyanne Conway is telling the truth here. Well, particularly since the FBI has come out with reporting that they're not going to do it.
That's the problem with the kind of journalism where you hold each side of a thing to be equally valid, right? Because in some cases, they're not. And it's your job as a journalist to go out and figure that out.
Plus, there's not just two sides here. The FBI is another player, and the FBI has already pushed back on this notion. I think the reason why the FBI has announced that they may be done today is a way to create pressure on the White House or on the senators to have a more extensive investigation. Because I can tell you, my daughter took a high school assessment. Public high school in New York is a nightmare to get into. And she had 90 minutes, and she came out after an hour. And my immediate reaction is, what did you do? You're not done. You didn't do a very good job. You got to get back in there. It was easy. Then take the extra 30 minutes. Double check your work. She announces, I'm coming out. After 10 minutes, my hair's on fire. And I think that's why the FBI came out with that. I think to basically say, to just indicate everybody, yeah, this ain't for reals. All right, we got to take a quick break, head into the fun half. Just a reminder, this show relies on you. It's daily listeners or twice daily listeners, twice weekly listeners or thrice weekly listeners for its support. You can become a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. Keeps this lovely studio, the lights on behind us and above us, and the electricity that's involved in this microphone, and this little marker that I use to point at that. That's all of that and more. Jointhemajorityreport.com. Also, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. Well, we just ordered a 5-pound bag of the Majority Report blend. That's the way we roll around here. Tomorrow is Tuesday. Michael, what will happen Tuesday evening?
Daniel Besner will join us to talk about his recent New York Times op-ed on a left-wing foreign policy and what that means. And we'll do a little bit of a sort of condensed history of foreign policy defense intellectuals. And we're also talking about why the new environmental refugees are rich. That and much more. Patreon.com/TMBS.
Jamie?
All right. So this weekend we recorded a new episode with guest Molly Crabapple. We talked a lot about Puerto Rico, disaster relief, prefigurative politics, mutual aid, all the cool things people have been doing there to help each other survive and rebuild after the hurricane. And we also talk a little bit about sex work, sex workers' rights, Sesta Fosta, stuff like that. So that should be out Wednesday. And we still have our conspiracy theories episode up as well.
We may touch on this in the fun half. We're going to find out more about what's going on with NAFTA, but apparently this may in some ways be a back end around parts of Sesta Fosta because of Section 203, apparently.
Of NAFTA?
Because of this deal between Canada and the U.S., the Facebooks and and whatnots put in a provision that would make them less responsible for what is posted by users, in which case that could undercut Sesta and Fosta. Good outcome, bad dynamic, where we lose the ability to maintain control over our own laws, and corporations can do end runs around these things. But we'll talk more about that in the fun half, because that's so fun. Matt.
Yeah, Literary Hangover. I'm still doing my reading of Hope Leslie for patron members. If you're not a member, you can check out the YouTube page. I'm at 970 subscribers, so I want to get to 1,000.
What's up with the hat?
I'm just wearing hats now.
Yeah, but why that one?
Oh, it's a Boston thing. He's upset about that.
I'm so anti JD Martinez that I'm a Yankee fan now.
We're going to take a quick break. Head into the fun half. 646-257 3920. 646-257 3920. We'll put on the IM. See you in the fun half. Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
You know, I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous, you're a little bit upset, you're riled up.
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude. You want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
Some good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501-457-238. 56, 27, 1/2, 5 eighths, 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate math nerd.
Don't you see?
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy.
Dance, dance, dance.
Rand Paul.
I had my first post-coital scene with a woman. I'm hoping to add more moves to my repertoire. All I have is the dip and the swirl.
Fine, we can double dip.
Yes, this is a perfect moment.
No.
Wait, what?
You make under $1 million a year. You're scum. You're nothing.
Excuse me? Fuck you, you fucking liberal elite. I think you belong in jail.
Thank you for saying that, Sam. You're a horrible, despicable person.
All right, gonna take a quick break. I want to take a moment to talk to some of the libertarians out there. Take whatever vehicle you want to drive to the library. What you're talking about is jibber jabs.
Classic. I'm feeling more chill already.
Good. Donald Trump can kiss all of our asses.
Hey, Sam. Hey, Andy. You guys ready to do some evil?
Hitler was such an idiot.
That guy might be a Nazi.
Agreed.
No.
Death to America.
Do.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow, that's weird. No way! Unbelievable. This guy's got a really good hook. Throw our hands up. Ooh. Wow.
But Sam, I gotta get off.
No worries. Let's. I want to just flesh this out a little bit. I mean, look, it's a free speech issue. If you don't like me,
Hey, shut up!
Thank you for calling into the Majority Report. Sam will be with you shortly.
folks, I just want to make sure that you get this warning about the oncoming race war. I'm just going to assume that everybody around here is white, so that know that this warning is for white people only. Let's outsource some of this warning from Tucker Carlson. He's the one who tipped me off about it. I'm speaking quietly because we should have the element of surprise.
Well, the press has taken only 2 lessons from the persecution of Brett Kavanaugh, not a sophisticated group. The first lesson is he is guilty, no matter how little evidence exists against him. And second, and this is a lesson they learned a long time ago, what I've been telling us a lot about for years, certain people are inherently bad because of their race and gender. And if you don't believe us, listen to this selection.
A panel of 11 white male Republicans opted to have a female shield protect them.
We saw today from Judge Kavanaugh was the patriarchy and white male privilege on display.
White men need to stop passing judgment on sexual assault victims.
If you have a group of 11 white men sitting there on the Republican side, you have to ask, do they get it?
Does Dave Gergen get it? Open question. Joy Behar gets it. She went on The View and went further. If you don't support further investigation of Kavanaugh, which seems like kind of a non-racial question, then somehow you want to institute apartheid.
The people on the Republican side, it looks like to me, do not want to investigate this any further. They just want to hold on to their power. They know that this country is getting darker. So it's almost like they're worried that, oh, white people are going to lose all their power. Pretty soon we'll be like South Africa, apartheid, where 10% of white people were running the country.
I'm not advocating for anyone's firing, but I know a lot of people in television who've been fired for saying way less than that. I hope that Joy Behar's not canned by ABC, but it's just kind of amazing that if you're Joy Behar, you can say literally anything on your network and nobody does anything. There's no advertiser boycott looming in her future. It's unbelievable. Senator Lindsey Graham, the new and improved version.
All right, pause it for 1 second. I should just say that I didn't even think that she was... I mean, what she was saying was sort of just a demographic trends. In this country now, for the first time ever, the number of that under the age of 10, white people are now I shouldn't say they're a minority, but the majority of children under 10 are kids of color. So you know what happens is
you should get
next year it'll be the majority of children under the age of 11 unless some trend changes. Then it'll be 12, then it'll be 13, 14, 15, 16. You see the way this goes through history, all right? And if you still have this dynamic that the Republican Party at least seems to be completely untouched by, then we could very well have a dynamic in this country where we have small percentage of white people who are running the country despite the fact that they are not reflective of the rest of the country.
Unbelievable. Senator Lindsey Graham, the new and improved version, introduced yesterday, responded to this madness today. Watch.
Senator Graham. Thank you. I know I'm a single white male from South Carolina, and I'm told I should shut up, but I will not shut up if that's okay.
Amplify single voices.
There you go. Exactly. The point being, obviously, I mean, I think this goes without saying, but the point that people try to make when they say 11 white guys is that none of those guys belong to a class in which they would have experienced systemic degradation of their value in society. And now, Lindsay might. There may be aspects of Lindsay's life that he doesn't share publicly. I wonder why that might be. I mean, so Lindsay might at least be more aware of that dynamic and how it works in society. You would think there would be value in that for him to use that. Now, maybe he's just a bachelor. He hasn't just found the right woman to settle down with, or maybe the fact that he goes around with, and it's an open secret in Washington, maybe he would understand that, like, why can't you be public about that? And the fact of the matter is that 11 white guys are going to have a lot less ability to be aware of the dynamic that's going on here, which is Brett Kavanaugh getting completely indignant that his trajectory to great manhood would be in any way altered by, okay, whatever I did as a 17-year-old to that girl. But that's like, I mean, this is an extreme. This is sort of an extreme version of this, but, you walk down the street, you don't alter your path because there's an ant on the ground. You either walk on it or you don't, but you don't change the direction you're going. But if there's another person there, you do. If there's something that's even bigger, you might a little bit, but not significantly. And I think in Brett Kavanaugh's world, that's the dynamic that's at play here. Now, it's different. If it's my aunt, if it's my pet aunt, I might act a little differently. But if it's not mine, I'll just walk, and that's it. Let's go to Tucker Carlson again. Tucker Carlson really wanting to make some hay over the fact that there are people. In fact, Tucker Carlson is almost as indignant as Brett Kavanaugh is, and for the same reasons, which is you can't tell me that in some way my being a white guy, the other one, my being a white guy somehow is a liability in any situation. That is offensive. And frankly, to me, that's the equivalent of a race war.
But tell me, as a logical matter, what the hell does race have to do with this case?
Oh, pause it. And we should say he's talking to a woman who is an attorney. Her name is Harmeet Dillon. She is a civil rights attorney. One of her more well-known clients was James Damore. He was the one who got fired from Google because he was talking about how women there are just inferior, broadly speaking. Here she is, letting us know about the oncoming race war.
Does race have to do with this case?
It has nothing to do with it, Tucker, but I think there are a couple of things going on here. Number one, what we're seeing is a phenomenon that's been happening in America over the last few years, and it has become fashionable now to be beat up on white men and whites more generally because we have this culture of spoils where we are being told that you are entitled to certain things in society and certain jobs in certain places. In California, we have a law now that you're entitled to board membership on corporate boards.
Pause it. I mean, the idea that we don't have a culture that it tells people they're entitled to something is absurd. Of course we have that culture. Now, she's actually going so far as to say, like, we have a culture now where women and black people and Latino people are, told that they have a right to something. Now, this has been the case in this country for its entirety, that white men are born with that privilege. It's almost absurd to suggest otherwise. But the assault on that privilege feels like oppression to them and their attorneys.
In California, we have a law now that you're entitled to board membership on corporate boards if you're a woman. And so that's part of our cultural shift. And, you know,
Pause
like you,
I just want to clarify something about that California law. You need more qualifications than just being a woman. So every woman born in California or moved to California, I want to make this clear. If you're thinking about moving to California because you want to sit on a corporate board and you're a woman, you will not get a job on a corporate board just because you're a woman. They're just simply saying we want some diversity. Now,
there goes my plan to fund the Rev.
There you go. See, that's why I said that as a public service. And you should know that in California, I don't know, how many millions of people in California? What is it? I mean, how many tens of millions of people?
I want to guess like 60.
Yeah, okay. Well, so we're talking maybe approximately 30 million women.
Only 30, wow. Just shy of 40 million.
Okay, so we're talking closer to only about 20 million women. And
that's a lot of board seats.
Or just make the boards
is
really
there
big.
an age cap?
No, but here's the problem. Here's the
18?
issue that she has. Very hard to find out of those 20 million women who are qualified to sit on boards. That's why this is a problem.
Cultural shift. And, you know, like you, I was taught, certainly from my faith as well as my parents and my upbringing, that we don't judge people according to what they look like or how they were born. We only look at people according to their merit, and we treat everybody equally. And that's an unfashionable concept now. So unfortunately, you know, if you believed in hate speech, what you heard yesterday would be the most vicious type of hate speech, and not just from the senators on the dais, but from every Democrat group and all the talking points. It was all hateful towards people like Judge Kavanaugh, which is kind of silly, as you pointed out, because both he and his accuser are from the same class and the same race and the same
I mean, it literally couldn't be weirder.
So,
are you worried that if dumb people like David Gergen or all the rest at CNN keep up with the race hatred, that will actually encourage some kind of conflict? You've seen this in a lot of different countries. We really don't want it here. But could we get there if they don't stop?
We have it, Tucker. Oh my gosh! So on Berkeley campus across the street where I'm.
Pause it for 1 second. So, one, Tucker is afraid of the oncoming race war, and he's corrected by this attorney. It already exists. You ready for this, folks? Listen, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but apparently we have white no-go places in this country.
We have it, Tucker. Oh my gosh! So on Berkeley campus across the street where I'm helping with litigation over there are places where whites are not supposed to go. I mean, that is apartheid. It's apartheid on our college campuses. It's outrageous. But at a higher level, stepping back from the cultural disintegration.
Hold on for 1 second. Is Tucker Carlson aware that Tucker Carlson just moments earlier on his show said that the idea of someone saying that there's apartheid in this country in years to come is so offensive that they should get kicked off? Is he aware that his guest just said that there's apartheid now against white people on the Berkeley campus? Is there a different Berkeley that I'm aware of? Is that we talking about a different Berkeley? The no-go places for white people, the apartheid? Go ahead.
From the cultural disintegration of this phenomenon, the Democrats are seizing on any kind of club that they have handy. So if you got a white man in front of you, let's beat up on him for being a white man. If it's Ben Carson,
maybe it
call him
works.
Uncle Tom.
You're right. I mean, maybe it works short term, but it seems like the long-term cost is potentially just way more than we'd ever want.
Very corrosive.
Yeah, very corrosive. I'm so glad that Tucker is very measuredly concerned about the oncoming race war. Just wanted to give you folks a heads up. So prepare for that now. And
Civil War II, Ground Zero, Berkeley.
There you go. It's going to start west. Like a lot of things, skateboarding happened that way too, if I remember correctly. Everybody was skateboarding out in California, and then all of a sudden it's here. So just be aware of it, and tune in tomorrow when we're selling ready-made meals.
Wow, what side are the Jews going to be on? Because I know, according to folks like Richard Spencer, we might not be white.
It's going to be tricky. It's gonna be tricky. It's
now
gonna be tricky.
accepting offers.
Exactly. Who wants us? Fox really went all in on this, didn't they? Let's just cleanse the palate for a moment, and then I'll go to the phones. Here is Elizabeth Warren. She, I don't know where she spoke about this. It was in Boston, but I'm not exactly sure what the. I don't speak Latin enough. Was that in Springfield? She was in Springfield? And she was, talking to, I'm not exactly sure what the context was, but it was in the last couple of days. And she was being quite explicit about what she saw in the Ford Kavanaugh hearings.
I watched as Brett Kavanaugh acted like he was entitled to that position and angry at anyone who would question him. I watched powerful men helping a powerful man make it to an even more powerful position. I watched that and I thought, time's up. For women to go to Washington and fix our broken government, and that includes a woman at the top. After November 6th, I will take a hard look at running for president.
Oh, I didn't realize. Okay, so that is Elizabeth Warren making a potential announcement of her presidency. There was also another clip that she made that I sent right here. It's in the, pull that one, where she went on to talk about the dynamic that was taking place. I mean, I think you see these things, you start to realize that she is going to run. But here is what she had to say specifically about the Kavanaugh thing.
Here is Brett Kavanaugh, who acted a lot like he thought he was entitled to this seat, and angry that someone would want to ask hard questions. But when he's angry, what do the commentators say? He shows how tough he is. He's back into battle. But I noticed that Dr. Ford, she's working her way through having to relive probably what was the worst day of her life. And then finally, Chuck Grassley turns to her and says, "Do you need a break?" And she says, "Will that work for you?" Here it is, one of the worst days of her life. And she's not allowed to be angry. She is there once again to say, what works for you? With deference, with courtesy. And you know, I feel like this is what's going on all around this country. It's not just women who are not entitled to be angry. Girls aren't supposed to be angry because it makes us unattractive to powerful men who want us to be quiet. And it's not just women. Everyone else who has less power should be quiet. Because ultimately what this is about power. This is about who's got it and who doesn't plan to let go of it. So I'll tell you this, today I am angry and I own it. I plan to use that anger to take back the House, to take back the Senate, to put Democrats in charge.
So that came out of the same talk that she gave in Holyoke, Mass, right outside of Springfield. And she alluded in the first clip to running in 2020, but I suspect what she, theoretically, the second clip is about the midterms, but I suspect it's really more about 2020 at this point.
Oh,
and
yeah. She's definitely running.
Now,
That's
I
a
know
very
what Jamie's
strong
going to say. You loved her her acknowledging power. Wish it wasn't so much with the Democrats at the end there. But the power is good, right? I mean, it was...
Oh, it really... I must admit, like, it hit me somewhere deep inside of my feminism that I just liked it a lot. I'm so cynical about the Democratic Party. I'm so cynical about electoralism, but like, I just saw her up on that stage talking about female anger, and I was like, "Yas, queen."
Yeah, I mean, I think, it would be hard to get a greater indication that she's running.
I think there's a problem with Democrats when they act like they're not angry. It seems disingenuous to the people that pay the most attention to it.
Yeah, I think that's true.
I hope she and Bernie are coordinating.
Yes.
I would be surprised if they're actively coordinating, but I also would be surprised if Bernie, if she has not already indicated what she's doing and that he's already said, okay. I mean, I don't think that he has any interest in running if she's running. And I think that you're going to end up seeing him function in many respects as one of her biggest surrogates. I think you can already get the sense that people are starting to coalesce around her, and it's going to be interesting. It's going to end up being like Warren versus Biden are going to be the two big parties, I think, within, and it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But I think right there she captured what, anecdotally, I think almost every woman I have spoken to has said some version of like, this has been the most disturbing couple of days that they have had, at least since the election. Because in many respects, like that, what we saw there, where like this guy comes in, yells at the committee, blatantly lies, and gets away with it. She couldn't have been any more credible. It's just not possible for her to have been any more credible.
She was a memory psychologist.
And yet it was ultimately irrelevant. Not because his testimony put holes in hers, just because he dropped down I'm a white guy who was the deal when I was born was like, I have the ability to achieve this, and doing something like that was never, ever contemplated as something that could get in the way of that, of my destiny. And that indignation was enough for almost everybody in the room. I mean, obviously not the Democrats, but, in terms of the way they're going to vote. But that indignation was almost enough. And it, I think, just basically reminded women who have experienced this in one fashion or another their whole lives, like, oh, this is where we're at still.
The anger is key.
Yeah, it seems real. Calling from a 423 area code. Who's this?
Samuel.
Yes.
It's Zach from Tennessee. How are you guys?
Zach from Tennessee. I'm doing well.
Hey, buddy.
What's on your mind?
Well, after a weekend of ketamine, I showed up to work today in a K-hole, and my boss was a little angry. And I was like, have you ever kitty flipped? And he fires.
Wait a second.
Asshole.
Wait, I'm not sure I follow any of this. You gotta help me out here.
It's a ketamine joke. Never mind.
It's a Kavanaugh joke.
Hey, good job on. Yeah, it's a Kavanaugh joke. Except ketamine. Never mind. Anyway, good job last night as Hugo. It was great.
Oh, was Hugo on the premiere?
Yeah.
What was it? I don't remember that one.
You came in and found that Bob had a rat in his underwear, the dead baby rat, and you, or not the little baby rats they were trying to keep alive.
Okay.
Spoiler alert.
I barely remember it.
Yeah. Well, I didn't give away anything.
Okay.
Trump is visiting my hometown here in Johnson City tonight, and
how big a venue is he playing at?
Guys,
how big a venue is he playing at?
He is playing at a place called Freedom Hall. I have tickets. All of my Facebook here in the Democratic. That's another thing I want to bring up later. In the Democrat Party, we all got tickets. There was just an abundance of these digital tickets. So I'm going to protest, but we're thinking that they gave out so many tickets that it's going to be full. It's about a 4,000 seat arena. Maybe 3,000, 3,000 to 4,000. Freedom Hall, Johnson City, Tennessee.
That's what's interesting to me is that they're going to that small venue. Now they probably gave out 10,000 tickets, 7,000 tickets because they want it to be like the venue's too small. But they chose a small venue. They're choosing small venues. Didn't Gillum just have a rally where there's like 50,000 people in Florida? 7,000, a 3,000 or 4,000 theater is like Mark Maron can fill that.
Oh, I mean, they had a Beatles tribute, Beatles tribute act that had it completely packed 3 years ago called Rain, and it was completely packed.
Well, they're a good one.
But I just had two quick questions for you. I called a couple of weeks ago, and I brought up the yearbook thing, and you were like, well, that's just 17-year-olds. But it actually, I'm not trying to get you to say that I owned you. But, it has come up to be quite you can say that.
Well, the issue is less about what he did in his yearbook and more about, the issue about his yearbook is a function of it being corroborating evidence for what he was doing at that time period, not in and of itself. If he had that stuff in his yearbook and none of this about Blasey Ford came up, then I still think not relevant. That's my feeling.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that it's now become
hashtag owned.
It's just become something that he is. It's become relevant because it corroborates what he was doing at that time. There's a reason why he's denying it, and 3 weeks ago we had no reason to believe that he would deny it.
Even the smallest detail, down to the Ralph, like you said, was ridiculous. Just one quick question: Can you briefly describe? Because Matt Stoller has blocked me from Twitter. I don't really follow him. I know he advocated voting for Romney in 2012.
I'm not sure he advocated. I'm not sure he advocated for it, but I think he had an argument that he was making about Obama, which I thought was not I understood the argument, and we had a little debate about it here, and but go ahead.
It sounds kind of vaguely familiar to another guy. I won't mention his name, Jimmy Dore, but anyway,
one is much more thoughtful about those things. But yeah, continue.
Yes, he was. What was he trying to get at about the whole prep school and privilege thing? I was just too. It was.
Oh, on his tweet thread. I think he was just talking about the notion of privilege and how that environment is one where you are basically hermetically sealed, and everything tells you that you have certain rights that basically just other people don't have.
Yeah. Okay. Well, hey, I appreciate it. Jamie, Matt, Mike, everybody, Squee, DJ, everyone there.
Oh my
guys,
God.
keep it up.
Appreciate the call.
Keep lifting. I love you guys. We're going to go protest Trump tonight.
Zach, take some video, send it to us.
I will take a video of the venue. I'll take a video of the protest. I'll send it to Majority Reporters.
All right, fantastic.
Right, Majority Reporters.
We'll keep our eyes open for that.
All right, check you later.
All right, bye.
Keep
All
lifting.
Keep lifting, man. Let us know how much you bench. That's one of the things we should do from now on. You call from a 210 area code. Who is this? Where are you from? How much do you bench?
Good afternoon, Sam. John from San Antonio.
John from San Antonio. How much can you bench?
I have no idea.
Oh, all right.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm going to start with a different opening because, you kind of irked me a little bit. So why should Bernie defer to Warren? His numbers are better than hers in head-to-heads against Trump. His polls are better in the Democratic nomination polls that have been out so far. He's more popular than Warren nationwide. He has a larger following. He's already won 22 states last year. There's no reason why Bernie should defer to Warren. I like Warren. I think when Bernie wins the nomination, she would make a great vice president. But, there's really no reason why he should defer to her. And I'm wondering why you think that he should.
All right. Well, first off, I don't know that I said I think that he should defer. I think he will defer to her. I think he wants to defer to her. I don't think he ever wanted to run for president in the first place. In fact, the reason why he jumped in so late was because he was waiting to see what she was going to do. So, but with that said, I'm more or less agnostic on this. I mean, I think people, if they want to run, they should run. I have no problem with that. I think there is a strong argument, and I guess we'll have a better sense of this, right, in the midterm, that women and their energy is driving the a lot of what we're seeing in terms of enthusiasm and voters getting out and voting. That would be the only, that would be my biggest argument. But ultimately, I think he's gonna defer because I think he doesn't want to run.
Well, what makes you think that? He's got a book coming out before the midterms.
I'm not saying that he wouldn't run if she doesn't run. And I'm not saying that he doesn't want to be an important figure in American politics. And I'm not convinced that he wouldn't want maybe a cabinet position, or maybe if the Democrats take back the Senate, to be in charge of the banking. You got to just contemplate from Bernie's perspective. Like, being president is probably not, the best job that there could be for everybody. And, certainly Warren didn't want it last time around. She was perfectly willing, being a very strong presence in the Senate and having, and she was, I think, wanted vice president, just because she wanted the resources. Why do I think he doesn't want it? Because he didn't want it last time. And he ran only when Warren wasn't running, and he ran as an issue candidate. Wasn't until late in the campaign where he thought like, oh, I have a chance at winning this. I should take it. But I think his natural inclination, I just don't think he's a guy who's grown up, and I don't think she is either, frankly, who has been like, it's my lifelong ambition to be president. Most people who run for president, it's been like pretty close their lifelong ambition to be president.
But that's why we like Bernie. Sorry to interject, but he's not doing it for his own ambition. He's doing it for us. And a lot of people are going to be very disappointed if he doesn't run.
I agree with everything you just said.
All right.
Tell it to Bernie. It's just like, I'm not saying that he shouldn't run. I'm saying my sense is he won't.
I don't know.
Where
Maybe
did that
maybe
sense
it's
from,
just
though?
wishful thinking, but I
just
feel
explained
like
it
he
to John.
is.
Oh.
Like he's been doing taking steps to like beef up his foreign policy chops.
Without a doubt.
He's making all kinds of appearances.
Without a doubt.
He's got his head in the game.
Without a doubt. And I think that if Elizabeth Warren doesn't run, that he will run. But I think that this is complete speculation on my part. Maybe I'm wrong. But I think his calculation, it's certainly what his calculation was in 2016, is, and the only thing that would be different now is that he has even more reason to want to stay in the Senate because he's actually like a guy who is like a leader in the Senate. I mean, and so he has a tremendous amount of power without the hassle of being president. And if you are interested in pushing your agenda, I think he looks at Elizabeth Warren and says, she is not going to be an obstacle to pushing most of the policies that I want. And
well, I mean,
that's just it's total speculation on my part. But that's just my guess.
On foreign policy, I mean, they are very much at odds with each other.
Yes.
And also, Bernie has led the way. I mean, I love Warren. I've read her books. I was, before Bernie said he was going to run, I was on the, read the press for the Warren stuff. But I mean,
I'm just giving you my analysis of what Bernie's thinking is. I am totally open, and I think in terms of like the issue sets, like I would be much more enthusiastic about Warren if she had some of Bernie's foreign policy positions, but I'm not convinced that she would be as closed off to them as someone else would be. And I would also say, like, I'm also not convinced that, for Bernie, like, those are still secondary. There was a reason why he didn't have anybody on staff for the entire campaign, practically, who didn't have any foreign policy experience. He didn't.
He is taking steps to fix that, though. Like, he had a great op-ed in The Guardian about foreign policy.
I know.
It was co-signed by Yanis Varoufakis.
I know, but
loops back to actually his original interests going back to the 80s. He's
I know.
Much more oriented towards that stuff in the 80s.
All I'm doing, you're not arguing with me. All I'm doing is stating fact.
I'm arguing with you.
And you're trying to say that, no, the foreign policy would be enough for him to stay in and run. Maybe. You may be right.
I mean, I would be fine with either of them, but I would definitely vote for Bernie over her because from a leftist perspective, his relationship to the Democratic Party is much more antagonistic. He would heighten the contradictions within the party and maybe even create a real rupture from the kinds of politics that they have been practicing for decades. It would be amazing, but she would be fine too, I'm sure.
Yeah, I just don't think that we're going to have that debate, to be honest with you.
Well, I guess we'll see.
I think either way it goes, they don't both run. That I agree with.
Yeah. I would hate to see them split the progressive vote.
I think it's great. Have Biden and all of those people run, but create some lane, preferably for Bernie, but for Warren as a backup of actual, at least center-left to social democratic candidacy.
John, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you.
No, it's all right. It didn't upset me. I mean, it's just that, I just think Bernie he's going to run. He's going to run.
I agree with you, John.
He's got our revolution. He's got this. He's got a book coming out. He's got everybody behind him, all of his supporters from 2016 and more. And I just think he's going to run and he's going to beat Warren.
Okay.
I mean, his numbers are better right now.
October 1st,
and I'm also wondering,
2017.
I'm wondering.
2018. Note it, John. I know you'll remember this day.
Don't bring us years back, man. Damn.
I know.
I'm wondering if you're
going to be as quickly as possible.
I'm wondering what?
If you're going to be broadcasting live on the night of the midterms.
Yeah, sure. Hadn't thought about it, but boom. Good
Thanks,
job, John.
John.
We will talk
Thanks
about
a lot,
that.
John.
We will talk
Thank
about
you.
that because if we do that, I would love your, to have some formalized involvement, John, if you're interested. But
all right, thank you very much.
All right, but if that's going to be the case,
go better than the last one.
we better
remember when
better
Trump won?
start lifting a little bit. I want to know what you're benching if we're going to do that.
Remember when Trump won? We were in the studio.
Yeah, I remember
Christ.
that.
Oh
no, I forgot it.
Oh, all right. Obviously you do. Jesus Christ.
That was just a weird way to put. Guys, remember that time that Donald Trump won the presidency? We were all here. We were all in here. We were talking, and then we were just like, "Wait, what? He won the presidency," and everybody was like, "Whoa, what's going on?" And
I had forgotten it until we had contemplated doing the midterms.
Ravenhead, 1997. So, do you all think what Jenkins predicting could be true? Warren, Bernie, Harris, and I think Gillibrand. What's he saying? That all of them are going to run? Like I say, I don't think Warren and Bernie run. Bring it on.
I hope they don't run at the same time.
But I don't mind all those people running. Sam Pentant. Sam, I read a very obvious but I think unmentioned point about Brett. That is, was Ford asked to sign the 65 woman letter? If not, why not? See you at home, boss.
Well, he denies even knowing her.
Right.
Denies knowing her.
Angel. Liz Warren hitting the deep back walls of Jamie's feminism. Hell yeah. Jesus. Rob Cull. Yeah. I live in Berkeley. Gloucestershire, England. No apartheid here. Rob milking cows, and they're both black and white. Sean. In Kavanaugh's defense, from the words of the great Tom T. Hall, whiskey's too rough, champagne costs too much, and vodka makes Brett sob like a baby in front of the Senate. California Liberales. What do you think is the likelihood of Sanders running with Warren as VP? Unlikely.
Who do you think it would be his VP if he was not
his VP?
Mm-hmm. You think a Kamala would be his VP? Is that what you're thinking?
Conceivably. I don't know.
No.
That would make the most sense on paper.
They like to balance it out.
Yeah, they like to balance it out. But I mean, I don't know if you would discount the possibility of Elizabeth Warren being his VP.
Being his VP?
Yeah, why not?
I mean, it's possible. I think it's more like you get like a Chris Murphy type of situation.
Why
I think Chris Murphy would be hers.
Well, Chris Murphy.
Although
Chris
Northeast
Murphy makes sense though. I think for any because of his sort of foreign policy and
foreign policy stuff is very good.
Yeah, very good on Yemen.
Fram from Philadelphia. Have you discussed the statute of limitations wrinkles for Maryland rape charge for Kavanaugh? Though attempted rape between minors wouldn't be prosecutable now because it was only a misdemeanor in 82. A WAPO op-ed by ex-deputy AG of Maryland and ex-Breyer clerk Thriru Vignaraja points to three types of crimes with no statute of limitations in Maryland. Attempting a sexual assault with the aid of another person counts as attempted first degree. All right, without going through all that, I think what is a very real possibility would be congressional hearings that cover all of this and could very well be a year or two out a mechanism in which we start to see the idea of court packing and or term limits introduced. I mean, if I'm a congressman and I take the chair, like, and they should all have this mentality. But if they don't all have the mentality of like, how am I going to get on the news today? I know what it is. I'm going to form a committee about this or that. I'm going to form an investigation about this or that. And it seems to me there's probably like 2 or 3 different committees that would have jurisdiction over something like this. And they're all going to run investigations. And they should. They definitely should. Okay. Here we have Tucker Carlson still. Oh, did I get the wrong one up there? Well, Tucker Carlson is highly invested in the idea that we are on the verge of a race war. Now, I know that seems weird to you because Tucker Carlson can't possibly in his daily life be in any way exposed to anything that would make him believe a race war is imminent, right? I mean, what's going on in Tucker's life? Now, with that said, there have been a lot of white supremacists who have had concern about this for a long time, right? I mean, it's one of the staples of these sort of like white racist groups that they're convinced a race war is happening. That could just be a coincidence. I don't know. I don't know. It's weird, isn't it? It's weird.
It's 100% projection, right? Because he's like, oh, well, we did all these fucked up things to people of color. It seems only rational that they'd want to do them back to us.
It's just
and we're doing them still, like we want to do them.
I just think it's weird. Let's watch.
Professor Jason Nichols teaches African American Studies at the University of Maryland. He's a frequent guest on the show, and he joins us tonight. Professor, thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Tucker.
So, as an almost 50-year-old American, I was brought up to believe that you should not, this was a core principle, judge people on the basis of their race, because it's not a relevant criterion for judgment, and it's not something you can control. Is that still true?
I think it's absolutely true that people should not be judged on the basis of their race, but there are advantages that certain people have on the basis of their race, class, and gender. And I think we need to acknowledge that.
But right? I mean, that could be true in individual cases.
Could be.
But when in individual cases...
Actually, no, not in individual cases. Actually, if you look at it with broad strokes, if you tell me about 20 people who get born in a certain area code versus another area code, or zip code in particular, I should say, within 10 minutes, I can tell you a lot about those 10 people. I may not get it right for all 10, but I can tell you what schools they went to. I could tell you probably what the median is of those 10 people income is, and get it right. And get it right within like $5,000 or $10,000. Is that just because I'm clairvoyant? I don't think so.
And gender, and I think we need to acknowledge that.
But right? I mean, that could be true in individual cases.
Could be.
But when in individual cases, but when you say it's true in every case, what you're doing is judging people on the basis of their race.
Let me just show a rhetorical trick that Tucker just used. Individual cases, every case. There's something in between. That's called most cases. Most cases.
Could be.
But when in individual cases, but when you say it's true in every case, what you're doing is judging people on the basis of their race, which we just agreed is
well, again, number one, I said race, class, and gender. And
let's just stick with race, because class is a fluid thing. I mean, your class can change. It can, sure.
It's rare, but
but it can. It's not in your DNA. I can't study your bones and find out what class you are in.
I would say race is not in your DNA either.
Actually, you probably could. In fact, they could do that even with mummies. They look at the bones and they say this because of the presence of this mineral, that it suggests that they were wealthy because they had access to these type of foods. But let's not get nitpicky. Continue.
Oh, but it can. It's not in your DNA. I can't study your bones and find out what class you are in.
I would say race is not in your DNA either, but we can go on.
Look, I'm not a scientist, but most people can't change the race, and I don't think it's acknowledged that you can. Sure. If it's wrong to judge people on the basis of their race, and I think both of us agree, we don't want to live in a country where people are making generalizations, negative ones, especially about whole groups of people. You don't.
We do live in a country that does
right, but
that.
We don't want to add to that because it's wrong.
Sure.
Then why are all the dumb people on television in unison attacking people on the basis of their race, and nobody's saying anything about it?
Well, I think, again, people are acknowledging the fact that certain groups of people have more advantages than others.
I mean, there's Tucker Carlson just like getting schooled and deliberately ignoring the reality of everything he said is true. That it's not all people, all members of a certain gender or of a certain race or of a certain class that have these things, but the reality is the median gives you a very good approximation of where they are now. Like I said, all I need is your zip code.
And they do this as if we don't have metrics about like income based on these sorts of, race or gender, right? We have all this information. So by ignoring that information, that these are unequally distributed, they're basically suggesting that it's natural.
Yes, and there's also the other trick is that they're saying like you're saying this about everyone, and really you just have to look at the mediocre student. The mediocre white male student achieves a lot more.
Maybe his name is Brett.
Maybe his name is Brett. Just
worked my
Maybe
butt
it's
off.
Chad.
I worked my butt off.
Oh yeah, that was the other thing about Brett Kavanaugh. Turns out, remember how he said like I got to Yale with no connections. Turned out he had one connection. He was a legacy. Like so, he has his grandfather.
I worked my butt off for that. It takes work to be a legacy.
Yeah. I'm curious. I would love to be able to go back and see how much money Brett's parents gave to Yale. And I don't mean in terms of tuition. I can't help but think that somewhere around the line, it may have been like a little Kavanaugh dining hall type of situation.
Yeah, it tends to
Kavanaugh
help
plate.
polish the turd of a mediocre legacy to have a little donation involved.
There you go.
Ivy League schools, man. So good.
Great system. Perfect.
Ryan
Keep it
from
forever.
California. You definitely can study bones to tell class. I learned that in Anthropology 102 in college. Bones can tell how hard you worked, your diet, nutrition, age at time of death, disease suffered. Yes, of course.
Tucker said he wasn't a scientist.
I'm not a scientist. I didn't do anything past 101.
I thought he was going to get all Marxist for a second and say, class is not an identity. It's a social relation.
Calling from an 818 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Sam, this is Jesse from Los Angeles.
Jesse from Los Angeles, what's on your mind?
Hey, I really just want to say thanks for everything you guys do. You guys are great. I just wanted to make an observation, say a few things, and a quick question. Made an observation about the Kavanaugh hearings the other day. Was that not the biggest example of bros before hoes you've ever seen?
Yeah.
With the Republicans and the way that they were treating the situation. That's just what came off to me. They reminded me of like in high school when a girl would just how guys would circulate around a girl who like the Renata alumnus situation.
Yep.
I remember with girls like that who had experiences with a lot of guys in a group. That was very common to sort of treat them that way. And I went to an all-boys Catholic high school, just like Brett did. And I remember guys like this. It was very common for the football players and the guys who got good grades that they were all, popular, and they would sort of, gang up and, throw parties with the intention of getting girls drunk and things like that. So this is totally not an isolated incident, in my opinion.
Yeah,
but in terms of it,
I was talking to my buddy from college about this the other night, and we're like, yeah, we know exactly. We have perfect examples of this. That in our college, there was no football team. It was just a hockey team, but you would see it, and yeah.
It's the old boys club, right?
Yep.
Like they were literally in clubs together.
Yes, literally the boys club. They called it something different. 100 Keg Club, the Renate alumni. What's the question?
So my question is, well, first I just wanted to say, there's a day of reckoning coming. One day there will be a day, because my wife kind of opened up to me in reference to the Chris Wallace thing about his daughters. My wife opened up to me about a situation that happened to her in college that I did not react well to, about something that happened when she was passed out drunk. And I had to have a good conversation with her about it. And I think the day of reckoning is coming. And I think that's what Republicans realize and why they're getting so angry is that, this sort of thing is going to have consequences in the future. And that's why they're trying to rush them through, because I think they know that with Me Too and with Ford's testimony, which was just one of the most amazing things I've ever seen in my life. I couldn't believe what I was watching. It felt like a turning point moment in our culture and our dialogue and just how we take these things seriously. But I still worry that he's going to get confirmed. And if he does, Sheldon Whitehouse mentioned that he's going to keep looking into it.
Yep.
that he's never going to let it go. So what do you think happens if he gets confirmed?
Well, this is...
And do you think this goes away?
No, I don't. I appreciate the call, Jesse. Let me answer. I guess it's sort of addressed this a little bit. But part of what I was saying last week was like, in the Anita Hill hearings, we found out like a decade later. It became sort of like, and I don't think it's wildly known now, but I mean, known in sort of like people who follow this stuff circles. Like there was 3 other women who all had stories about Clarence Thomas. But it took like a decade for that to come out, right? Like somebody wrote a book reflecting on it, and it comes out dribs and drabs, and nobody's paying attention to it anymore. The FBI can interview just 4 people. But right now, there's somebody from the Washington Post and the New York Times trying to get to Chris Garrett. And eventually, Chris Garrett is going to speak. Eventually. And right now, there's somebody, Washington Post, New York Times, going around finding all these people. And this story's going to come out. And the story could come out between the time that they vote to confirm him and his inauguration. And the interesting thing about this is why like when the story about the FBI thing came out, and I was on Twitter, trying to work on Twitter about it. I can't remember where I was, but I was explaining to somebody like, this is why I'm on Twitter right here. Is it because there are other reporters and opinion writers out there, and between now and sometime midweek, there has to be enough sense that the FBI investigation is inadequate. Not just inadequate in trying to find the truth of what's going on, because that's not why they called for this FBI investigation. They called for this FBI investigation because they need to abdicate their assessment to a third party. So it's just like we all got duped by the intelligence in Iraq. No, they didn't. But the intelligence was there, so they had cover. Jeff Flake, and maybe he's just doing this to be a good guy for Collins, and maybe he sees this as like, I'm doing this for the Republican Party. I'm going to allow Collins and Murkowski to vote for Kavanaugh by calling for this FBI investigation. The FBI investigation is going to come back, and we're just going to interpret it, regardless of what it says, as being, we have the okay to vote. And they're going to go vote. And if it comes out 3 or 4 years later that, hey, wait a second, this wasn't right. Like, well, the FBI investigation at the time, nobody could have known. But if it comes out a week later, then yeah, you could have known. And if you knew that the FBI investigation, and everybody knew that you knew the FBI investigation was blatantly insufficient, then they feel the pressure, right? And that's what's going on here. So making a big stink about the legitimacy of the FBI investigation is important, not just to find the truth, because we can find the truth. People can hire a personal investigator. This is not a hard story to figure out. But the FBI is there to give it an imprimatur, I should say, that senators get a green light to vote. FBI has found nothing.
Yeah, I have a feeling that there are more women out there. And like the reason why we've only heard from Ford is because most of them aren't as perfect a victim as she is, Like she's she's led a very respectable life, She can't be slut shamed. She's literally got a degree in psychology.
I think it could also be like, look, the Renate thing. The reason why I get so upset about the Renate thing was because he's saying, like, you're telling everybody, including her family, that she had sex with these 6 guys or whatever it is, right? And you're bringing her name up here.
Which is basically what Jamie's saying.
Well,
it is
no,
an elaborate
no.
indirect
No,
form of
I
slut
think-
shaming that he's doing.
It's slut shaming,
Yes.
but I don't think that it's that people aren't as good victims. I think it's that they don't want to bring up their past.
That too, probably.
And are
also
that's
don't
what
want to get
happens when-
death threats. and
They
maybe
are
have to
they
move their
are
houses.
in high society and don't want their names to be brought up as having, like had a past in college or high school.
Oh yeah, that too. But as much as it's happening to Blasey Ford, it would happen to someone who's not a quote unquote perfect victim even more.
Right, except for I think like a perfect victim would be even less willing to come forward, because why am I dredging up something I've spent 25 years, trying to deal with and get over? And I can totally understand, like, I don't want to get involved in this. I think that's a lot of what's operating here. And I don't want to lose my status or my friends or this and that. That's why they all signed that document. They all know he's lying. They all know what that dude did. They all know.
Also, I think they definitely circle the wagons because they know that, Trump himself has these same kinds of allegations against him. And they know if one man can go down for this, they could all go down.
That's why they announce what happens at that school stays at that school. One thing we got to watch out, though, for, Jamie, is socialism. And fortunately, they have given Ben Shapiro a television program on TV.
Best impression you have.
To tell us the Socialism Watch. This is the Ben Shapiro election special. Socialism Watch. Here is
Socialism on the ballot? Maybe.
There we go.
Cuba's gone out of fashion. Turns out that when people are floating 1950s Chevys into the Atlantic Ocean, that's kind of a bad sign. These days, Norway is the Marxist paradise. There are just a few problems with this perspective. First off, Norway isn't socialist. It's a capitalist country burdened with massively expensive socialist redistribution programs.
They're burdened with it. You know who burdened them with it? The country itself burdened themselves with it. In other words, it's not a burden. It's something they've chosen to adopt.
I thought it was Cuba.
Well, he was talking Cuba first. Now, of course, what he wasn't saying about Cuba is that the reason why they have a Chevy in the water is because of the blockade, the economic
blame the blockade,
right? That
Basically,
we've had
you're
on
blaming
Cuba.
white guys again,
right? Exactly.
For the embargo on Cuba.
We wouldn't allow them. We wouldn't allow for anybody to sell them vehicles. So we're going to mock them for having old vehicles.
Expensive socialist redistribution programs. Norway ranks 23rd in the world in business climate compared with the United States at 18th.
Pause it. So,
whoa,
Ben Shapiro.
Stop the presses.
Ben Shapiro has just made a very strong argument that you can have extreme wealth redistribution in this country, and we could virtually maintain our world business climate ranking, even from the Heritage Foundation. Because surely the only thing that we don't have, that we have going for us is not just that we don't have massive wealth redistribution. There's got to be other things, right? It's America. We're number one, maybe 18. And
That's so great, though. It's like if we did all of these incredible social interventions, it would only knock us 5 points down the list.
Well, no.
Beautiful.
It probably wouldn't.
Yeah.
It would probably just knock us to 19th. And what's the difference between 18th and 19th? But I don't know that that's his point, is it?
Norway ranks 23rd in the world in business climate compared with the United States at 18th. As for Norway's social programs, its spending habits have been subsidized by an enormous oil slush fund and supremely high taxes.
So there we should do it. The only way to do this is to get enormously high taxes. That's fine. And he's saying that we should expropriate the all of the oil digging that's going on in this country. Now, I don't know if I would go that far. I'd probably do the refineries. I would nationalize, but it is an interesting idea. It works in Alaska. That money, at least in some part, comes from the oil that is dug up there. Maybe we should do a part of that here.
I also just like it's public, so it's a slush fund. Like, is Exxon a giant slush fund?
Yes.
Because it's okay. Well, fair
Let's
enough.
take it.
It's all the economy is a slush fund. I'm into it.
High taxes. Here is the reality. Norway's successes, lower levels of income inequality, high levels of prosperity, Those predate the rise of Norway's socialist infrastructure. They're actually a result of Nordic social capital, high levels of social trust, and cultural homogeneity. Presumably, President Obama would tell Americans that Scandinavia is a sort of heaven.
Pause it. So, in other words, socialism hasn't made things any worse, yet it clearly has made for a lot more benefits to people.
At a time where inequality is rising in more capitalist economies, socialist one is staying more inequality.
The reason why, it's because there's something special about the Nords.
There's a saying, Norway's a little slice of heaven.
Check their amygdalas.
Total heaven. On
Heaven.
earth.
In Scandinavia, he'd say, there's no poverty. Well, as Milton Friedman responded to a similar statement, in America, among Scandinavians, there's no poverty either. Social capital matters. Culture matters. That social capital is being actively undermined by Norway's generous welfare state, which actually pays people not to work. As The Economist wrote in 2015, quote, Norwegians have coined a verb, to nav, meaning to get money from NAV, the state's benefits agency. That welfare state policy also endangers immigrant social and economic mobility. As of 2017, the Norwegian Labor and Welfare Administration found that about half the total number of people in Norway receiving social welfare payments were immigrants. That report also stated that many of those immigrants were...
What is social welfare payments in Norway look like? Right? Like, they get health care. They're getting all sorts of different subsidies in terms of work. Like, what does social welfare look like? I'm curious, but...
Everything sounds fine so far.
Receiving social welfare payments were immigrants. That report also stated that many of those immigrants were living in poverty-like conditions.
Well, that's probably why they were eligible for the welfare. But what he fails to argue is, what's the problem?
The only problem, it seems to me, is they need to make the social welfare payments higher.
The only thing it sounds like he's trying to argue is that there's something fundamentally better about the Nords.
Yeah, I wonder what that is.
Well, in his mind, it seems like he's arguing that they're homogenous, so they can afford to spread resources around.
No, it's the classic, they're all white, so they have high social trust, which is why they have a great economy, and they can have the right wing says they have high social capital, which is why their capitalism works, and then the neoliberals say they have homogeneity, which is why they're able to have a social safety net. And they're both just lanes for arguing against why we can't have universal health care and so on here.
It sounds like he is making an argument that you can genetically have a higher class than other people, right? He's tying it to race and racial homogeneity.
Yeah, I mean, they shift to culture now, but we know.
Yeah, but it's the same.
Pretty amazing that the top three largest amounts of Scandinavians in the country are in blue states.
Also, I know, from North Dakota, a lot of those people were given land by the United States government when they came over here and told if they farmed it for a period of years, they could just have that.
Hey.
Right.
Shut up.
And I imagine, unlike the black folk who were given land at that time or bought land, didn't have it taken away by people in the Midwest. Literally have it taken away.
Is there more?
That's it.
I want to see him contradict himself again, where he's like, Norway is not even socialist, it's capitalist, but also it's a Marxist hellscape.
Yeah, he said that up front.
When did Ben Shapiro start talking like that? I like that, though. Ben Shapiro starts talking like a Valley girl. I dig it.
Spocko, I was just in Norway 2 weeks ago. No mass shootings. People had health care. The streets and fjords were filled with tourists, not homeless people. Socialism, bring it on. That's just because they were all Nords. Contagious chameleon. Biden can't run in this atmosphere. The way he treated Anita Hill contrasted with how he treated Thomas is a no-go. Political ad waiting to be... I will say the Kavanaugh thing really hurts him. Yep. Thick Mulvaney. Wish they'd got some clarity on the boof rules. Is it smelted or dealt it or denied it, supplied it? Colin from Nebraska, plot twist. Kavanaugh nailed Trump with that with full beer, and Trump nominated him knowing he would be exposed. Senator Pug, growing up with alcoholic parents, it's no surprise the breadth and scope of how much Brett Kavanaugh lies. Alcoholics, in my experience, never own up to their failings, always want to blame everyone else before they'll take a look at themselves. Oh, and he's a Republican. I really felt for Klobuchar. Bullprog. Polanski is back in the news with a new movie about soldier being wrongly accused of spying. Wink, wink. Can't wait for right-wingers to latch on to the subtle subtext and start defending this child molester too. Dr. Chaos MD. If somehow Tucker is right and some sort of race war kicks off, I'm going to have to be the first person to sell out my race so they don't have to be on the same side as assholes like Tucker Carlson. I'm down for Warren 2020. I would prefer Bernie get a term in office. He has only so much time, but with a looming financial collapse, once again, I feel Warren at the helms. The bankers wouldn't get away unscathed again. Warren is not much younger than Bernie. Now, women tend to live longer in our society, but I don't, their age is not terribly different from each other, if I'm not mistaken. Angry Boofer, what do you think the odds are Kavanaugh is confirmed? I would say 50-50 right now, but it changes every day in my mind. I would say right now it's probably 60-40 that he does get confirmed. But
I think he's getting on This Is Hell World.
Seems pretty contingent on what happens in the next few days.
Yeah, I mean, it is, I think. Bronze Plan. I think the component that stumped Kavanaugh was asking personally, what do you think of the committee should do? Because it eliminates his default answer of appealing to the committee. Indeed, yes. Kentucky Comrade. Hey, Sam, couldn't a Senate Dem like Booker continue to leak documents on Kavanaugh without any significant threat? Republicans don't have the votes to expel a senator, so why not leverage that to continue leaking damaging documents on Kavanaugh? Well, one, you don't want to do that, but I don't know what documents he has that would be really that damaging necessarily.
Be interested to know what was said behind closed doors about the debts and such.
I get the feeling his dad. That was the sense I got. You might have a chance. I mean, look, we now know that Kennedy negotiated this. I'll resign if Brett Kavanaugh is the nominee. Wasn't that reported today? I mean, it's been out there a little bit, but I think it was more explicit today. So Kavanaugh was added to the list like a year ago. He wasn't on the original list that Trump had. He was added to the list, probably an overture from Kennedy. Kennedy negotiates this. While that's happening, word gets to Kavanaugh, you're on the list. You're for reals now. Go get somebody to pay off your debts. He does. Although, like, I don't know what the theory is behind that. Like, why does that make you look better that you had someone pay off your debts? But I think, like, to a certain extent, like, it didn't even seem embarrassing to me. Like, we'll take care of it. It doesn't matter. Nobody's going to dig into that shit.
That's what it is. Nobody will dig in.
And, like, I don't know why you can't go onto the Supreme Court with that debt. And after you get on there, you say to whoever's paying you off, like, hey, will you do me a favor? Maybe he gets paid. Maybe it's a friend who just gives him the money because they don't want it. Like, if it was his dad, that wouldn't be such an issue if it was after he was on the Supreme Court. But it seems like a bigger issue if it's like, oh, it's Jim Stevenson. He's a major industrialist who may have cases that come up from the Supreme Court.
I worked my butt off to get that loan from my dad.
Or, I don't know, Michael Cohen, maybe?
Who knows? But it obviously wasn't scandalous enough. And that may just mean, like, not scandalous enough may mean, like, he just got it from the same people that everybody in the room get their money from. Right? I mean, yeah, it was a banker. Maybe that's where he picked up that technique of where do you get your money from? I love Sarah Palin. Lindsay was real fiery last week. I thought he was going to start taking off his earrings for a minute. Come on. Sam, I know you've had a tough time attracting libertarian callers to debate. May I propose an open challenge to Jimmy Dore listeners? No. DX Fool. Hi, folks. Happy Spocktober. Interesting Wikipedia entry for Kavanaugh. If he joins the Supreme Court, he would be the second straight Georgetown prep grad, third member of the Brooks Brothers rioters that protested the Florida recount, along with John Roberts and Neil Gorsuch.
Of course.
And that SCOTUS will again be 2/3 Catholic, 1/3 Jewish. Also, he was one of the lawyers who argued that Cuban boy Elian Gonzalez should stay in the U.S. as an asylum seeker and not be sent back to Cuba. Wow. Nuts. Calling from a 509 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Sam. It's Ronald Reagan.
Ronald Reagan. What's on your mind?
Well, first of all, 6'3", 220, 410. It's a height weight bench.
Yeah, no, I know.
I'm totally making up that last number, but
I was going to say that's a little bit high.
So I had a really good call planned where I was going to rope in John from San Antonio and Mike from PA. I had it all worked out.
Yeah.
And I reached out to John from San Antonio on Twitter, and he said no before I could even propose the call. So I knew he was not going to give you his bench number from the second he called.
There you go.
He's not here for your games.
Well, yeah, he's not here for yours either.
Exactly. So two quick things. I've really kind of wondered about why they wouldn't just move on to some other like heritage douchebag and just jettison this guy. But it seems clear to me, the more I think about it, that the implications of this are really huge, not just for other future nominees, but for the president himself. I mean, what is the standard that is being established that if there's a credible accusation, it should be investigated by the FBI, and that it's potentially disqualifying for high office? And that's got to be troubling for somebody like Trump. And in fact, they've come right out and said it, that, you know, this is going to have a chilling effect on people who were douchebags in high school applying for judgeships, I guess. That's been one of their reasons why explicit reasons. I mean, we don't even have to read into it, why they haven't wanted to go forward with this. But it is interesting to think of, what this would mean moving forward, not just for judges, but, the president has like 12 people that he's paid off, I think. And I don't think any of that was ever really investigated. So I think that's the main reason they see themselves in this, and that's why they're digging in their heels.
I mean, I think there's something to that, but I think it really is their whole project is a function of this culture war, right? This is no different than, this is the zero sum. This is the zero sum situation, right? I mean, if women can assert that an infringement on their bodily sovereignty is a legitimate offense, like an offense that could keep you off of the Supreme Court, that takes away from the privilege that these guys have, which is like, look, I need to be able to try a bunch of different things, in my youth, and then go on to be a great man. And
President,
you're inhibiting that. I mean, I think that's the point.
Right. Can I just say something real quick about Ben Shapiro?
Yeah.
I heard that clip that you played. That's some of the most racist bullshit I've ever heard. And, I mean, he's ignoring, of course, what it means to be an immigrant. It means that you've come from someplace else, usually for really negative reasons like war or famine. And so there's actual like real world reasons why people in those situations have less money, and it's not because of their status as something called, the word immigrant is not the thing to blame. And it reminds me, I called in after that Dave Rubin show, and some of the people that were at the show tried to like dox me on Twitter because you guys clipped it and put it online, and one of these guys,
glad we could help with that,
was the guy who Dave Rubin like brought onto the stage because he has a hair disease where he doesn't have hair, And the whole thing was that he had been called a skinhead at some rally, and he was so offended, and he's not a skinhead, he's not a racist, he just like wants to talk about ideas. And so I found he had a YouTube channel where he and his friends sit around and talk about how like there should be a white ethno-state in Europe. And these people are all the same. They deny that they have any type of racial animus. They're really super offended and aggrieved that anyone would ever levy that charge against them. But then they say stuff like this, which makes it clear, imagine how Ben Shapiro talks in private. That's what he's saying in public. Makes it clear that, they think that there's cultural, in big, heavy air quotes, reasons for economic divide and poverty and things like that. And it's, this is like the modern day N-word. It's really, really disturbing. And so, anyways, thanks for playing that and really hammer those guys on that stuff, because it's really troubling to see so many people talk that way. But,
appreciate the call.
Thanks for taking my call.
Just to reiterate the point. I mean, this is about him, about them, about Shapiro saying it's the Scandinavian quality of them.
We all know what that means.
It's phrenology.
Yes. But it's also like, but, and then Matt explains, well, maybe Milton Friedman should have looked into the historic advantages that Scandinavians received, as opposed to, let's say, compare them to black farmers in the same area at the same time. And what happened? How much the state and society ripped away what black people had versus those Scandinavians. Maybe those Scandinavians actually got some of that land because it had been ripped away from black farmers at that time. And this is pre-Reconstruction too, right? We're talking like early 1800s, mid 1800s. And then the flip side of that being those immigrants who show up, half of all people are on welfare in what country was it again that he was talking about? Norway are immigrants. Well, why might that be? It might be because the people in Norway get enough benefits that it keeps them out of poverty, and they live their lives in such a way where they are less apt to be subject to the things that make you poor. You have better educational experience, you get a better prenatal care, better health care, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas these immigrants come in, why are they immigrants? Why are they immigrants? They're immigrating to this country because of disadvantages they had where they were before they were in Norway. Maybe I've come from a country that's war-torn. Maybe I've come from a country that has very extreme poverty. Maybe I am part of a class of people in that country who are not allowed to be educated. No access to schools. No running water. Whatever it is. So, of course, when they come to Norway, they are going to have attributes that were a function of their culture or natural disasters or war that essentially put them in the least advantaged position in a society that doesn't have those things.
Yeah.
It only makes sense. But if you just say immigrant and you just say Scandinavian, then you get none of those nuance. And if any of this is reminiscent about what our critique is for folks like Sam Harris, where it's just like Muslim, rest of the world.
IQ. They are anti-history. They're anti-context by definition. And you can't have that politics by definition if you have any type of understanding about how the world actually works. And they're predicating everything on, violently undermining that. Even down to the famous Milton Friedman example where somebody in his class said, but what about, somebody who can't buy a BMW? And he said something like, no. There's never can't. It's only choose. As in the homeless person could choose to not eat for 3 years and be a skeleton driving a BMW.
And that actually, I was rereading Corey Robin's Reactionary Mind. That goes back to Burke, who said that if someone points a gun at you and says, "Give me that money," you were making a voluntary choice to give over your money.
That is that is right-wing philosophy summarized.
Yes, that's necessary. You have to have that that dynamic, because you cannot have any type of economic exchange involve coercion, or their whole model goes out the window. And then the libertarians tried to update that with, but that's force. But that's force.
Yeah, and then they define force as something very, very specific that does not involve, I don't know, the prospect of starving to death if you don't have a job.
Right. And also does not involve the, when it comes to American libertarians, the genocide of native people and taking their land because of the way that the French designated how they would give out land. You remember that argument?
That was a mulligan because of a French accounting trick.
We have to start somewhere. We have to start somewhere, folks, and we're just going to start after we get the property. That's
and you're not just. I don't think I'm getting across the logic of it.
It's the opposite of historical materialism. It's like ahistorical idealism, and that's why all these people are so obsessed with myth as well.
All right, we have time for one more call. I am sorry, folks. I am just going down the list, and this number, calling from a 704 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, am I live?
Are you what?
Hello?
Yes, you are live. What is your name?
Am I live right now? Okay, cool. My name is Michael from North Carolina. I just had a question about this California law, and I guess I'm having trouble reconciling, I guess the whole treat everybody equally, but then also mandate the board composition of corporations. Do I have that right?
Yeah, I'm not totally familiar with the law, but let's just assume it is what you say it is. What are you having trouble with?
I don't know. I guess you shouldn't be treating people differently based on their gender or any intrinsic characteristics, but why is the government mandating this stuff?
Well, you know that corporations are the ones. Corporations are completely a function of a government license, right? You know that, right? Corporations get all sorts of benefits in our society that are a function of being essentially accredited by state governments and federal government. You're aware of that, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're driving your car right now, right?
Yes, sir.
Do you have an issue with the government mandating that your car maintain certain safety levels?
No, that seems reasonable.
Yeah. And I think in many respects, it's the same theory that corporations have clearly had a problem in terms of integrating as far as gender. And again, I don't know if this law exists. I don't have a problem with it, but I think the argument could be look, we have too many instances within the context of corporations where we see incidents of women being discriminated against because of their gender and suffering from hurts, disadvantages in terms of their career trajectory and their ability to get to senior positions because of the legacy of the way this country has been. And one way we're going to correct that is to say there are undoubtedly enough women who are qualified to fill these positions. And so these boards, the corporate boards, right, which are just overseers, must have a certain percentage of women basically to function, as, that there's not such a hermetically sealed, homogenous ideology in that corporation that women are consistently disadvantaged. That would be why I would be in favor of something like that.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where I feel I agree on principle, where it's it's clearly better if you have more diverse viewpoints, in a corporate board. It just feels weird that top down government saying, all right, this is what you have to do. Like, couldn't you go even further than that? And I don't know, just like make a bunch of these little tiny requirements based on like gender, based on race, and you have the government kind of micromanaging a bunch of these like.
Well,
what's that?
I mean, I think look, I think that I would take each case as it comes, but I don't have a problem with that, broadly speaking, except for maybe from an efficiency standpoint. But this is quite easy. This isn't like, the government doesn't have to do too much. It's just like they have corporate filings. I used to be incorporated in California. I used to have a filing that I would fill out every, I think, year or quarterly. I can't remember. Very basic. And if I had, board of directors, number of women, 5, number of men, 5, or whatever it is. That's not too hard.
Yeah. Okay, devil's advocate, would you be kind of like in favor of something like in the opposite direction? Of like, okay, you should have, one of each gender on a board, maybe something more neutral like that?
One of each gender on a board? What do you mean?
I don't know, like, hasn't
Could you have an all-women board?
There's also, like, fully female boards, right? Like, would you be like, all right, have to have one guy on the board? Or
I'll tell you why I wouldn't have a problem with it. I wouldn't have a problem with an all-female board right now because it's not a real problem that exists in society. Like, I'm not even concerned about, if you were to tell me, like, look, of the 3 all-female corporate boards in California, let's say there was 3 of them, I have evidence that men do not get promoted as much in those 3 boards. I would still say that's not enough of a societal problem to address. Come back to me in 75 years when women rule everything. If men are not getting a fair shake, then I would be open to dealing with that problem as it exists. But why I am in favor of that law is because there is an existing problem in the real world, right? That I think needs to be addressed. And it was a function of centuries of not just culture, not just nature, but of law made by man that inhibited women in these positions. And so we need to redress that. We need to provide redress. We need to fix those problems. Look, my mom could not have a credit card in her name when I was born. Do you understand that? Gender? Yeah. Yes, because of her gender. Like, do you realize how far out we are from this stuff? Not that far out. So. Listen, that law, the fact that was legal, that bank was licensed by the United States of America, right? I mean, it was licensed by a state. The fact that she couldn't have a credit card in her name, I mean, come on.
Yeah, but like, why not? Okay, so why not just kind of be like, hey, if there's discrimination and you're actively excluding people, based on these characteristics, then
because we have a societal problem. So instead, we have a societal problem. And so the answer is not one to go in and do investigations in each separate company, which then people would complain is incredibly invasive and we can't do our business. It is simply to make a law that allows for the companies to fix it by themselves over time, with the theory that the leadership constructs the culture in that company. And part of the problem with the culture in that company is a function of the fact that there's been one segment of the population that has controlled that culture.
Right.
Appreciate the call, Michael.
Well, I appreciate you sharing your viewpoint. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, folks. Couple more IMs, and then we will get out of here. Bald stab. Isn't the largest majority still white? When it breaks down minorities, does it put us all in one pot? I'm not sure I follow that question. Really cool. What's the age difference between Warren and Bernie, which a Gen Xer would be supportive of VP if any of the 70 plus? That being said, shoot. Can we not discuss 2020 for another 5 to 6 weeks, please? Yes, I'm happy to do that. It just so happens that she announced it. So, Mailman, Sam, I joined late. Did you guys talk about Matt Damon's SNL Kavanaugh? We did not. Attorney Andrew, new character idea. Brett from San Antonio begins crying uncontrollably when he hears that Sam sort of said on a previous Majority Report. JJ Cool, do you think the new NAFTA will pass through the Mexican Congress with their new government coming in? Also, what do you think would be stronger facing Trump on stage, Bernie or Warren? I think they'll both be pretty strong in their own ways. I don't think that's the only thing that works, but matters. But more on NAFTA as we go. Dr. George, I went to St. Clair Catholic School and won the Christian Spirit Award. I attended Marshall McLuhan Catholic Secondary and Graduate's Average Student. Then I went on to Humber College, which I graduated straight A's. Then I went to Ryerson University Computer Science. I work full-time as a software engineer. I returned to school now in the final weeks of my master's. References available on request. Political jargon. On Bernie and Warren, I think you're right that Bernie doesn't want to run, but he should run with Tulsi Gabbard as VP and Warren as AG.
Is that you, Jimmy Reefer Cake?
It could be. I think he probably doesn't want to associate too closely with someone who is like actively involved in promoting a hate group. Shadow ban politically commissioned officer. The problem with Bernie running is the Hillbots irrationally hate him for more than they hate Trump. They will never forgive him for proving her to be a neocon, neoliberal, who's the worst campaigner of lifetime, and I'm old. They do not have that hatred for Warren unless HRC tells them to. They will stay home.
Hate her.
And
hate.
Look.
Hate
as
Warren.
unfair as it is to Bernie that there are white-knuckled never Berniers out there, one of my problems with Hillary was the baggage that she came into. Now, I don't think that baggage, I think the baggage that Hillary came into was much greater than Bernie's, but it's not an illegitimate point. Let's put it that way.
But they are a vocal minority. Like,
Without a doubt.
I've seen the polls. I think it's something like 8% of Democratic voters have a negative view of Bernie Sanders.
Right, I agree.
They are all online, though. If you look at Gillum's thanking Bernie for coming to help him campaign, there's like 10,000 replies of just the most upset people in the world. Like, you should take credit.
I
for
do
it.
think they're all online. Max in Phoenix, I'm 42. It's taken me 10 years to only start to understand what happened to the night my husband threatened to kill me with a knife and had the charges dropped against him. It is my belief that women still support the patriarchy, even though they seem to have some position power, are still scared of something. Something like the belief of don't bite the hand that feeds you without asking the question, what are you feeding me for? This process has just started for me, and it's extremely painful but necessary. Good luck with that. I'm sorry about what you've been through. Winky, I love The Intercept, but God damn it, I still can't get over Glenn Greenwood platforming Tucker on their podcast and framing him as a maverick truth sayer. African American women with college degrees have higher infant mortality rates than white high school dropout women. Red Flaggy. Well, I think the point is...
I get the point. The point is obvious.
Red Flaggy. Sam, we begged Elizabeth to run last time. She stayed silent. Bernie was compelled to run because Elizabeth refused to challenge the Clinton machine. It soon become obvious why Warren stood down. She knew how bought and paid for the DNC and superdelegates were for Clinton and didn't want to get involved. Still like Elizabeth, but she did fail the people by not endorsing Bernie for Massachusetts. Swade Dartha, make a case for Bernie's efficacy as a politician. I like him, but I don't see a list of accomplishments that make me think he'd be a great president.
How would you have a left politician? Where are these things that are getting passed in the Clinton, George Bush, and Obama eras with no even center-left coalition around him in Congress?
I will wait without having to even make that most obvious excuse as to why you can't look at his record. I would say, name for me the single most announced policy taken by virtually everybody running across the country as their premier policy position. It is called Medicare for all. Tell me that would have been the case if it wasn't for Bernie. I mean, that's like overwhelming, right? Overwhelming. I will tell you the second one. and that is some form of debt-free college. Almost every single person has some form of debt-free college. His goes a little further than some people's, but that issue would not be live was it not for Bernie. There's probably others, but those are the two big ones. Bad Lobster. Remember, Sam, Cedar Green Party 2020. I want to watch Door's fucking head explode. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to come out for the Green Party. All right, 3 more. Winnipeg Craig, Sam, why don't you want Bernie to run? The left needs guts. Hello, I'm tired of effing around with these people. It's time for the left to stop playing PD patch and put some foot in the ass. I know Jamie's down. How about the rest of the MR crew? And the final IM of the day.
I want more civility.
How come no one has funded 24/7, 365 paparazzi-style coverage of Lindsey Graham's daily life? I think it would sell pretty good. That's a good question. I myself would be against it. I don't believe in doing anything like that unless they are actively trying to hurt those people. And then, in my estimation, it's your fair game. But
the Republicans have never done anything to hurt gay people.
That's right. Well, yeah.
No.
All right, folks. See you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bar, but finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I guess somewhere the choice was made for the option where you don't get paid, for the road that bends before it finally breaks you. I guess somehow I lost my drive between the 101 and the 5. Do you know how far the detour takes you? Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my